Is Thursday, June 3rd, and we are reconvening our Monterey County Board of Supervisors budget hearings from yesterday. Could we get a roll call, please?
Good morning. Let the record reflect all supervisors are present, with Supervisors Alejo and Lopez appearing via video conference, and Supervisors Askew, Adams, and Phillips appearing in person.
All right, so yesterday we finished all of the department presentations. We're going to continue with item number 7 on our agenda, which is any additional, so this is the Finance and Administration General Government. And what we'll do is we'll work with, is Mr. Woods on the line or Ezekiel Vega? We'll have them.
I'm on the line. Okay, Ezekiel Vega is going to take control of the not presented departments here.
Okay, perfect. So Mr. Vega will let you announce each of the not presented departments, but this will be a chance as we go through each not presented department for the supervisors to speak up about anything within the recommended budget that you have comments on. So with that, I'll pass the microphone over to Mr. Vega.
Good morning,
board members. Sorry, Mr. Vega, hold on just a moment. We do want to welcome all of our Spanish-speaking viewers today, and I would like to ask for an announcement from our interpreter. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, my name is Hector Guzman.
Is it on?
Hello, my name is Hector Guzman, and para los participantes de habla hispana, queremos notificarles que tenemos los servicios de intérprete en español vía Zoom, seleccionando el icono global abajo de su pantalla, ya sea en su teléfono o computadora. En estos momentos no tenemos los servicios de intérprete vía llamadas regulares.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And for anyone else who's joining us on YouTube or Facebook Live, you're also welcome to log on to Zoom at 224-397-747. That's the webinar ID. And we did take all of our public comment yesterday, so we'll just be continuing today with our board discussion. But we'd love to have you join us and watch the conversation continue. All right, with that, Mr. Vega, I'll pass the microphone back over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Supervisor Askew and other members of the board, members of the public. As indicated, now we're moving to our section of the book for those departments that were not presented. So what we will be doing is going through every section of the book. We'll be asking from each of the board members at that point to make any specific comments or any specific changes that they deem appropriate for the specific section, for the entire section that is on the agenda. So right now we're moving to item 7 as indicated, the Board of Supervisors, that begins on page 159 of the budget book. Any changes to that section?
So any comments in regards to the Board of Supervisors, item number 7 on our board agenda? Hold on, let me get my participants' hands raised. And once again, our staff is listening for 3 voices to indicate any changes. And maybe if you could just give me thumbs up if we're good so we can move forward.
I think Mr. Vega said that what he's looking at is page 159 of the budget book, which is the first one there is the Board of Supervisors itself.
All right, I'm not seeing any thumbs up one. Are we good, Mary? Yeah. I see Chris. Thank you, Chris. Supervisor Alejo, thumbs up on that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, moving along to item number 8, the County Administrative Office.
That begins with page 161.
I don't know, we got a big thumbs down up here, but.
and that page
okay.
161 includes multiple units, beginning with Unit 8045, Administration and Finance, all the way to Unit 8541, Emergency Operations Center. So this is a section where we have Laguna Seca, Cannabis, Mail Courier, Rifle Range, Records Detention. So any changes on this section or any comments? While we wait for any potential comments, I just wanted to answer the question that you had yesterday, Supervisor Askew. You had asked why there was a reduction in a couple of areas during the budget. So there was a reduction of $10,000 for one of the memberships that was reviewed and was deemed that no activity had occurred. That was for the Monterey Bay Defense allowance membership for $10,000. That's why there was a reduction of $10,000 in that section. And then on contributions, there is also a reduction of approximately $27,000 in that section because the Salinas Valley Promise was included as part of the final budget last year, and this year is not being included in the amount of $200,000. And also the Cannabis Authority now is being included as part of this recommendation for $173,000. So the net is a change of $27,000.
I see. And there was another question about what page does this section end on? Mr. Vega, are you able to share that?
It should end all just before the page 191, but I'll be able to look at the book because we have this in order that it shows on the budget book. So you look at, for example, the previous section was 159 through 160. That was the board supervisors, and then 161 all the way through 190 should be the CAOs section. But I'll confirm on the hard copy while we wait for any comments. Right?
Okay. So Supervisor Lopez, I know that you had some comments from yesterday. I'll pass the mic over.
Yeah, I wanted to focus. I heard Ezekiel mention that, in the past we had the Salinas Valley Promise under here, and I know that they had an ask in. And so if this is the appropriate time, I do think that that's something I would like to see continue to get funded here for a couple of years, understanding, the need for the investments in our young people, especially coming out of high school. They didn't quite have a senior or junior year, and coming into high school, they're going to need the additional support that this program offers. And not only that, those students that we did invest in were the students at the clinics on Saturdays, putting needles in folks' arms, delivering the vaccine that's been so critical to our recovery. And so in terms of investing in our workforce and our medical workforce and in the future of our community, I think it's an appropriate request. And so I would ask for support in funding that program.
We had a number of.
We just have all their local projects.
We had a number of projects that have been requested. This is one of them. Salinas Valley Soccer Complex, the Aromas Park that I've been pushing, more money for Laguna Seca. Are these the times we're going to be addressing? Is this the appropriate time to be addressing all those?
Mr. Vega, when would be the appropriate time to address all of the additional requests that have come in?
It depends on what section. This will be the appropriate time to address Salinas Valley Promise. This is where it was budgeted previously. The Salinas Soccer Complex, for example, also will be under this specific section. And I will say that any other requests that will be in general administered by the county administrative office, this will be the section to do that. So we'll have to look at the specifics for each specific request and determine if it's appropriate for this section. For example, if it's something related to childcare, maybe the right place will be somewhere in social services and other sections. But right now, anything that is related to the county administrative office that will be undertaken by the office will be appropriate.
For here. Okay. So let me go to Supervisor Alejo first, who had his hand raised, and then we'll circle back over. Thank you. Supervisor Alejo?
Yeah, for Mr. Vega, I just want to clarify the Salinas Valley. I'm very supportive of Salinas Valley Promise. I think the numbers speak for themselves in giving our Monterey County youth key opportunities to succeed at Harnell and then go on to different, further their education beyond that program. So it's, but I think you said 200. I think the last time commitment we gave was 250. So I just want to be clear on what what the commitment was last time.
The information I have received from staff is that the amount was 200,000 last year, but the request this year is 250,000.
Got it. Okay, got it. So yeah, I'd be supportive of the 250, and also want to raise the request that we got from the Salinas Regional Sports Authority. We've made a lot of progress on the furthering the regional soccer complex. We needed to work with some issues on state permitting, and we now have a roadmap. We had a recent meeting with county staff to move forward and on the next phase of that project. And so I know the city of Salinas is looking to do a 250,000 match that the county does. And so I want to be supportive of the request made by the community. It's one of those legacy projects that's working in phases. We remodeled the first phase of restoring the existing soccer fields, and anybody who drives by there during the weekdays and especially on the weekends, you'll see what a benefit and what a beautiful sight it is to see the thousands of players and their family members out there. This is the key year to move to that second phase, and I'd ask my colleagues to support that particular request as well. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Phillips.
Well, is this also the time that we might address economic development? I know we have the development set-asides, but then I was talking to Mr. Woods about some other funds set aside for economic development. Would this be the time to address that as well?
So I think item number 9 is our CAO non-departmental, but I think we can easily, this is all under the CAO, so if we want to discuss them all right now, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So have at it. Lay it out. Lay it out for us.
Okay.
What would you like to see?
I don't have a problem about Salinas Valley Promise. I would probably think, I mean, I've talked to them. I would think with as much money as coming in from the state for schools and stuff that, maybe they don't have to rely on as much. And I talked to Jackie Cruz about kind of phasing it down, but I don't think we ought to make a commitment for 2 years. I would be happy with or satisfied with 1 year, but maybe 200. But I could live with 250. As far as the soccer complex, I don't have a problem with it. If I also get okay. If we also get some money for the Aromas Park, and I'm looking for $250 for that, and I've set it out. In North County, we got shortchanged a little bit just on timing on how our parks developed. And when they got Manzanita, it was a great thing, but then we were bogged down with all the money in Natividad, and they said we're out of money, and so they had to build their own park. We did a similar thing at Pajaro Sunny Mesa, or Pajaro Park. There was some federal funding, but all of it was basically donated. The Aromas Park has been an amazing thing. It's the only place up there in north. They've been working on it for 20 years. The county has supported putting some money into bathrooms and things, but they have now have a dog park. They have a walking area for people. They have a visiting area, and they have a soccer field, but they want to put in a top-grade soccer field, and it's the only thing out in North County, and we don't have any private parks. This is the only park up in the area in North County, so I would feel if we're going to put money into the soccer complex in Salinas, Aromas is entitled to the money. They think they can raise the rest of the money with volunteers and Granite Rock, Granite Construction. Chapin is very involved in volunteering there. Laguna Seca, on that one, I really think we have to take a hard look, and maybe it's not going to be in this budget, but when you're talking about what a large complex it is and the fact that we haven't done any capital improvements to there for years and years and years, and we turned it over to someone and said, well, we want you to run it for us. But bottom line is the track needs to be replaced. It should have been replaced 4 years ago. You have the start-finish bridge that is inspected every year, whether we can even keep it open. That has to be replaced. The campgrounds need to be redone. And it's the largest facility that we have equivalent to the lakes down there. And we're not investing in our capital improvements, and it's the biggest driver of TOT in the county. So I think we have to look at how we're going to fund that. And if we just took the money that we're given to Lake San Antonio, I'm not complaining about that anymore, but if we took that much, $4.5 million, they could completely redo the track that needs to be done. And if we don't get it done by next year, Indy may not come there anymore. So we have to find a way to generate some money at Laguna Seca, and with this one-time money, it may be the correct time. And finally, on economic development, we've had a big push from the ag, from hospitality, from the wine people about we need some of that money that we got, ARPA money, to have a stimulant for the economy. And besides the development set aside, I think we ought to have $2.5 million set aside for economic development. And what I talked to Mr. Woods about, or what his suggestion was, rather than trying to parting out those programs that we've had requests on, Park It, River Road signage, and the various other special requests we've had, is we put a package of money in and say, bring your project to us, to the Economic Development Committee that Mary and I sat on, and we get input from the rest of you, but bring your stimulus funds and requests to us, and we'll take a look at those and grant those as you put a thing. So whether it's Park It, I think definitely we want to do the River Road signage. I think we have to look at making sure that we have an emphasis on the North County, South County, maybe what we can do to start promoting the Lake San Antonio for dry events, those types of things. But look at it from a countywide standpoint, and have that bucket of money there. And if it's not all used, or if we have a question about it, how it should be used, we bring it back to the full board. But I think they are entitled, especially when our community, especially the hospitality and restaurant, been hit harder than anybody. And maybe some stimulus for the other things, for the gyms, the hair salons that need to get revitalized. So that's my suggestion, that we do put some money aside. They asked for $4 million, but $1.5 million that they were requesting, we've already done, because one of their requests was for child care implementation. So those are my thoughts and requests. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. I think we've got someone taking good notes for us here, I hope. Okay, Supervisor Adams, and then we'll move over to Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you very much. And my colleague and I have had the opportunity to talk about this whole thing, and I'm very supportive of exactly the plan that's being put forward for economic development. However, I have a grave concern about Park It. I'll just use as the example. Maybe the wine signage is part of this as well, but Park It specifically, we have been embarrassingly slow on recruiting a department director for economic development. And if the projects that have the lesser amounts of funding that are being rolled into this are held up because we have not been able to select a development director who will ultimately make the decisions about whether or not we can move forward with these other projects, I'm concerned about that. So I need to understand, I need to be confident that by making this decision of putting $2.5 million into economic development, which I support 1,000%, that we're not going to get held up because we haven't been able to select somebody to run the department. And you know, how's that going to work? So if staff can ensure me that by moving in this direction of the 2.5 all bunched together, that it's either as a board or as, you know, individuals, we can pull out what needs to be pulled out to ensure that the projects are not held up because of our inability to make a decision, that I need to know that. That's, go ahead. So will Dwayne be the acting economic development director at this point, or what's the plan on this for hiring the economic development director?
Through the chair, this is.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, this is Dwayne Woods of the County Administrative Office. In fact, I believe in the first part of this week, early part of this week, we are actually closing that recruitment. So we have we went out to a very extensive, larger than we did the first time, recruitment, and we have received quite a few more applications. So that will be closing this week, and in the next couple of weeks, we'll be actively doing interviews and making selections, hopefully within the end of the month or the early part of next month, on a director to, you know, get the resources there to start moving that forward. Each time we have, you know, utilized a lot of internal staff to keep things moving. So even though we don't have a director, things are still moving forward. And I am connecting with various folks in the hospitality agency groups to start to ask them about key individual stakeholders to bring to the table to have creative ideas and create programs for some of this ARPA money.
So are you telling me then that if, in fact, going back to Park It, just as the example, if that money is needed, that we will be able to get it like that without having to wait for somebody to be trained and brought in? And because honestly, as I look at the, how long it takes to get people hired at the county, it's going to be, you might say you're hoping that it's going to be by the end of the fiscal year, but it sounds to me like it's probably not going to be until August. So I just want to make sure that we will be able to access the funding for the programs that are needed, if in fact that has to happen now.
Through the chair, supervisor, indeed, the access to the funding and the development of programs and bringing them forward to the Economic Development Committee will not, it doesn't, we will do that with or without a director of economic or manager of economic development. So the access and use of those funds is not dependent upon the hiring of a manager. Obviously, having a manager on board will help us have the resources to be more robust and do more things, but access to those funds will not be hampered.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure this has been recorded.
Yeah, no,
sorry, let's go to Chris Lopez next, and then I'll bring it back over. Okay, perfect. Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to go back. I know we're looking for 3 this morning for commitments, and so I heard 2 for the soccer complex. I support that, as well as the park request for North County for Aromas. And then on the Salinas Valley Promise, I heard Supervisor Phillips' concern, but hope we can get a 3rd vote for the 2-year commitment. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Supervisor Phillips, we'll circle back to you.
No, I was just going to say also we have to get the committee, the economic committee, together quick when they're got these things. Our staff can help staff it with Dwayne and their department too.
Madam Chair, I hadn't really finished.
Oh, sorry, Mary, Supervisor Adams, we'll circle back so you can finish, and then we'll head over to Luis Alejo. Okay, perfect.
Thank you. I have the opportunity, obviously, to weigh in on the other issues that are facing us here. And I'll start with the Salinas Valley Promise. It was $250 that was from last year, and we funded it through the cannabis assignment account. And I am supportive of committing again. I would like to commit just $250 for that, with the promise that we would look at another $250 for the following year, especially if we have the opportunity to have the assignment account up and running again, because that's exactly what this should be used for. Regarding the Salinas Regional Soccer Camp versus the Aromas Park, are we investing within in the city of Salinas's projects, as opposed to having funding that we can use to invest in our own projects, our county projects? And with Aromas, I certainly support that, because that, to me, there's no city of Aromas. That's under the guise of the county. So I support that without question. But I really question the Salinas Regional Soccer Camp, because it's not ours. And I worry about that. It makes me, I'm not going to be able to support that at this point. I think those were the only ones on the current list that we've got in this department. I have other things that'll come up under HCD that I'll want to talk about as well. And then going back to Laguna Seca, and I wanted to know if you could tell me what amount you were we were talking about, because I know that there have been several different things, including the sewer and water project for $1.45 million. And I don't know if that's what is coming up in this discussion, or if we are talking about the opportunity to invest more serious money into Laguna Seca, which is exactly what it needs. I think I said yesterday that the county is a noted poor landlord, and we have not kept Laguna Seca up specifically. And I can tell you from not just my years on the Board of Supervisors, but previous to this, when I served at United Way, Laguna Seca is a driver for the hospitality economy. And I remember this so specifically because I was engaged with it then. A specific event may lose money, but the restaurants and the hotels were packed. And that's really, what I think is critical. And if we don't invest in Laguna Seca, if we aren't able to make sure that people still come because the track, works, and we lose the big races, we're not making any sense. We're not doing well on our investments, and we aren't serving the will of the people in my mind. So I want to talk about a specific amount of money that we might be able to put toward Laguna Seca, since this is the only time we're ever going to have this opportunity with the kind of funding that we have available to us. So I'm unclear whether Supervisor Phillips had a specific number in mind as he's looking at this, but my hope is that just as we did down in the south, that we would be able to invest, say, $3.5 million in the track and be able to do some of the work that needs to be done to make sure that we're going to be able to have a robust season at Laguna Seca over the long term, and that we can continue to bring people into the restaurants and the hotels of the Monterey Peninsula. That drives the TOT, that makes everybody happy.
I'm happy with 3.5.
Let's take it over to Supervisor Alejo.
I think they could raise the rest of it.
I think it would be possible.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The regional soccer complex is our park. It's our property. And even though we have, it's one of those partnerships that we like to brag about, but when it comes to funding something, then all of a sudden it's not our park. That was curious to hear. But from the beginning, it's been a partnership between the City of Salinas, the county, and the Salinas Regional Sports Authority. And as we just stated yesterday, out of all the millions of dollars in parks funding, District 1 and perhaps District 4 get almost zero funding every year. So when we come with these small asks for 250, I hope that my colleagues would be supportive, and I know the majority have already expressed that, but I just wanted to state that for the record. But on going back to some of the issues that Supervisor Phillips brought up, there was a slide that was called Arpa Economic Recovery. And in there, it had the proposed layout for economic recovery spending for ARPA over the 3 years. And I know we're talking about different pots of money, but it's not like the staff haven't already recommended funding for that, you know. So, for example, there's a pot of funding under economic recovery. And I don't know if staff could put this chart up, but it was part of the overview in the budget committee. It's under the chart that says the ARPA infrastructure projects. The next slide was ARPA economic recovery. Because there's millions of dollars spent for there it goes. There you could see for business retention, you'll see that this is over 3 years. So we have allocated or a plan to spend 1.7 million for this pot of funding called economic recovery, and then 1.5 million the second year, 1 million the third year. Under employment programs, 800,000, 500,000, 250. But under countywide hospitality and tourism, there is almost 850,000 set for the first year, 500 set for the second, 500 for the third. And obviously those could be perhaps moved around, perhaps less on the third year, more on the first year, perhaps. But I wanted to make sure my colleagues recognize that there is some funding for in the millions of dollars for under the categories of economic recovery and for business retention and for the hospitality and tourism. And that's a total of 1.8 million over 3 years for the tourism and hospitality. Let's see here. I think those are the 2 points I wanted to bring up at this time.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Alejo, and thank you for referencing back to the slide, which I think is helpful. Anything else? Your hand is still raised. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, I'll weigh in on a couple points. I do have at the forefront of my mind just we have to be able to pay for all of the things that we want to be putting forward. And so as we come back and circle around to figure out how we fund all of these needed programs, it is in my mind that, you know, we're going to have to make some compromises somewhere along the line. But the Salinas Valley Promise, to me, that is an economic development investment in our workforce. I think that the students who are benefiting from that program, the number of first-time college students who are going through Salinas Valley Promise, who are utilizing the supports of that program and finding finding success in college and transferring into additional education, and then coming back into our community to work here, I think is valuable. The soccer complex and the Aromas Park are ones that I fundamentally, I think that's where I want to be, making investments. I think those are the kinds of things that benefit community that I hear our community asking for us to be supporting. I struggle a little bit with the reality that we have so many unfunded or deferred maintenance needs within our own infrastructure systems. And so finding the balance, I don't know that we can both invest in those programs, which we know the community wants and will utilize, and continue to attempt to continue to, also maintain all of our other county assets. So I think there's choices that we have to make as a county about, do we support community programs like that, or do we double down and try to make our assets viable and fully functioning. But I'm inclined today to support the soccer complex request, and I can support Aromas Park request as well, Supervisor Phillips. But do hope that we can be thoughtful about where we're going to find the money to pay for these things. In regards to Laguna Seca, I really feel like I need to have a bigger understanding of what all of the deferred needs are. It's not something that I am prepared to support funding today. In terms of economic development, putting aside a chunk of money, there are a lot of different requests that are coming in, and it would make sense to me to maybe take some amount of funds, whether it's 2.5 or looking at the 1.7 that's proposed in the slide that Mr. Vega put up, and say that we're going to commit that for economic recovery activities within a program to be determined. I don't know that I'm prepared again today to say exactly what those programs are and how they get, divvied up, but would be comfortable putting aside some money for that conversation to happen. Is there anything else within? So I think we have some consensus on some of the additional community requests.
Madam Chair, can I ask on your Salinas Valley Promise support, are you saying the 2 years or the 1 year? I've heard two on either side, so I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, it looks like we're kind of split there. I mean, it seems like there's that's going to be an ongoing request that keeps coming to us. I'm inclined to support 1 year, I think, just as our budget situation changes over time. I'm not sure about committing a multi-years at this point.
Madam Chair, I didn't weigh in on Laguna. I'm very supportive of
please.
I'm very supportive of the racetrack, but up until now we haven't had a more detailed presentation about the priority of needs, and I think that's needed to tell us, the board, what are all the projects and what are the most urgent. I hope that if it's not funded today, that we could have that down the road and then do some long-term planning of how we could invest in that world-renowned racetrack. It just seems like it came out of the blue without much conversation before the budget hearings about what are those needs. And I know Dwayne Woods, when he was overseeing a lot of the maintenance projects, he started with some of the most fundamental maintenance, including like restoring some of the edges of the racetrack that became kind of dangerous. Some of the painting, some of the bathroom fixes, some of the investments in some of the portable food trailers that are utilized out there. But it would be good from Mr. Norigi and Mr. Woods to kind of come to us at a future point of what are those priorities, and let's start having a plan to be able to tackle those thoughtfully. And I did want to just weigh in on the wine corridor signs. Supervisor Lopez and I had a referral about that. We thought some of that was going to get done. It hasn't. The money that we've allocated previously was spent to promote the Salinas Valley, and I know the ask is for $300,000. But we had a meeting with the wine Growers and Vendors Association a while back, and there's a lot of science to be done. I mean, Kim Stemler has done a great job in planning and making sure we're getting all the right permitting and authorizations to put up signs. But with all the requests, I think if we do at least 150 this year and maybe 150 next year, we could get started on at least installing half of those signs, where we have like all the clearance already, and then next year come back and ask for another 150. That way we split it over 2 years, knowing that there's too much work to get done, that I think at least doing half this coming fiscal year and half next might spread that work over 2 years. That would be probably more realistic, but nonetheless allows this important project to get off the ground, especially as we're talking about economic recovery and providing those signage for our tourism that come into the Salinas Valley Wine Quarter would be an important accomplishment, I believe, as part of our economic recovery plan.
Thank you. Supervisor Lopez.
Yeah, I'd support the 150 on signage. And then on the question of Laguna Seca, you know, I really want to see a plan. I hear the concern, and I see that personally as economic development, knowing that that track is a major driver for tourism to the peninsula. Even during shoulder seasons, people still want to be on that track running. And so I think that there will never be resistance to having that presentation come forward and finding a way to fund that. You know, in my mind, there's opportunities there, but today's the first time I've heard that the track's bad. You know, or yesterday actually was the first time that we have to completely redo the track. I'd heard of some of the other projects with the crossing and some of the other issues, but the whole track needing to be redone is new to me, and so I'd like to really dig into that with a full presentation. But it is something that I'm ready to support. It's just I want to know more fully what that looks like and what potential partners might be out there to help us fund that.
And Madam Chair, to that racing track condition point, I mean, I've been at events where at Laguna where even some of the drivers say, don't repave the track, keep it as it is because of the traction with their tires. And so I think you'll have mixed opinions about whether the entire track needs to be redone or not, depending on the racing event out there. So just so we know that, be cognizant that we do need a further discussion about the condition of the track and whether it makes sense to do it now or at some point down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Adams?
Thank you. The projects, the Laguna Seca projects, are all clearly identified in the capital improvement plan. Every single solitary thing that we're talking about is identified in that plan. And I believe at next week's board meeting, John Narigi is going to come and make a presentation to us. So my suggestion is that we sort of put this on the side and look at Laguna Seca, the needs for Laguna Seca when the CIP comes forward at later this month. I think that would be an appropriate way to move forward. I think as well regarding the parks, going back to all of the parks, whether it's Aromas or the lakes or Laguna Seca or Toro Park, we really need to invest in and better maintain the parks just in general. That was one of the things that came out of the Citygate report, and I think it's something that we need to ensure that we really follow through on. I think that's it for the moment. I had another one, but wanted to be sure that that it was clear that everything is laid out. You know,
and Toro Park does have $1.6 million budgeted for it under the Arpa infrastructure projects.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Thank you. Yeah. So regarding the wine signage, that's mixed in with Park It as part of the $2.5 million in economic development. So I don't see any reason to pull that out, you know, separately from all of the other things that are put in. So, you know, my understanding is that Park It and the wine signage are all included in the $2.5 million economic development funding that is going to be administered at this point through the Economic Development Department. So I don't see any reason for us to throw additional money at that when it's already being planned for.
Supervisor Phillips?
Well, the only thing is if we know that's going to be coming out of the money, maybe if 150 and 150 for the wine signage, then we wouldn't have to come back to the committee with that. We can move forward and same maybe with Park It if that's something you feel strongly.
It's just something I know we need.
But those things, and we could just say, well, and we're only going to have 2 million in the things instead of 2.4. And Supervisor Leo and Supervisor Lopez bring up a good point. I just about we ought to take a look at Laguna Seca in a little more depth. And I know Mr. Nerigi's been trying to get that on the calendar for give us an update, and that's coming up next week. So they have a valid point about looking at it. That the problem we had a little bit, I think, is the Parks Department looked at a lot of the parks, but I don't think they, when I asked them to kind of look at Aromas Park, that they weren't as focused. And since they don't have to manage Laguna Seca, I'm not sure they focused on there as much as they did when they look at the other parks. But I do think that Chris and Luis bring up a good point, that maybe we ought to look at it in a bigger thing, like Supervisor Adams suggested, and you'll get to hear more about it next week while I'm in Hawaii, but I'll be listening in for you.
So I have a couple pieces to add in here. So I think we have some consensus around a handful of things. We have consensus that we need to have a study session on our parks and Laguna Seca specifically. I think that the CIP plan it will be coming back on the same day that we're approving this final budget, but I'm kind of hearing that maybe we need to have a larger study session to really dig into the CIP, so that those who don't sit on the committee have a chance to really understand everything that's included and being planned for. I do want to just point out, when we had our conversation with Parks, Public Works, and Facilities, that we chose not to approve the augmentation request for the admin operation manager that would have allowed that department to hire a chief of parks who would ultimately oversee some of the investments that we're talking about here and planning for those investments. So if that is a priority that we as a board have, that we want to focus on our parks, having the staff who's available to do that kind of planning work and coordination work and bringing those projects forward, I think would be a critical piece that we maybe missed earlier in the day. But unless there's support to get that position filled, I think we can direct staff to just bring back an update of where we're at. So at this point, I think we have support for the soccer complex funding. We have support for Aromas Park. We have support for 1 year of Salinas Valley Promise funding at $250,000. We have a request to bring back a more complete review of Laguna Seca needs. And I can get behind supporting the wine signs as well for the $150,000 to get it started, knowing that we're going to dedicate the rest of the funding as recommended for economic development to bring back some more specific recommendations about how to spend those dollars. And I do just want to go on record also saying, as we build back our economy, I really think that any funding that we spend needs to be focused on supporting growth in jobs and industries that pay living wages. And we historically have two large industries in Monterey County that are great, and they are our driving economic forces. But many of the jobs in those industries don't pay year-round living wages. And so as we have this opportunity to think about how we're investing in economic development and in economic recovery, the recovery that I want to be supportive of is recovery that's going to pay wages that allow people to live good, decent lives and take care of their family. Okay, so I think we've covered, Supervisor Adams?
Thank you. There were two other items that I wanted to just touch in on. And one was Park It, $25,000 for the Park It program. And the other was whether we had the two, now it would be $2 million for the Economic Development Department.
You're looking at the economic development as part of the CAO's office is what you're talking about there, not a separate department, right?
It was what we had discussed with Dwayne as far as ensuring that we were going to be able to move forward with some of the programs within economic development.
Right.
And we had talked about, at that point, the wine signs and the Park It program were included in the $2.5 million. And then we determined, okay, maybe we should lower the 2.5 for economic development to $2 million and include Parkett and the wine signs. And now I'm hearing that the wine signs are in, and the Parkett program for 1/10 of that amount is not in.
Mr. Vega, can you chime in on the amount of money that's being dedicated for economic development, economic recovery within ARPA?
Supervisor,
Yes.
this is Dwayne. This is Dwayne. I've asked
Dwayne.
Ezekiel
Thank you,
if he could
Dwayne.
put the slide up. So what I've heard was, if you look at the slide, currently in the economic development arena, we have recommended a total of all of these categories of 4.5 million, 3.1 million, almost 3.2, and in the tourism area specifically 1.8. And I think what I was hearing was two supervisors were wanting to add an additional 2 million there, but I didn't hear any other supervisors add any additional funds to that category called economic recovery, hospitality, tourism. But currently there's 1.8 million that is in that category. And as far as the Parkett program, I haven't heard that it specifically got 3 specific votes like the wine corridor, but it still would be eligible to be in these categories for funding because there is funding still. So just how the board would like to handle that, but I haven't heard 3 votes to add an additional couple million in there. So there is money there, 1.8, but I haven't heard any additional funds going there. Now, having said that, there's also 4.2 in countywide business retention that can be used. The board's already using some of that for grant programs to businesses, but there is some money there.
The 1.8, is that the development set aside?
No, that is not. That is just ARPA money that's put aside to be specific about countywide hospitality tourism efforts and focus to do programs such as the board was talking about through the Economic Development Committee. So there is 1.8 there. I didn't know if the board wanted more or not.
My feeling is if we got 1.8 there, if we got another 200,000, then we're there with the Parkett and taking out the signage.
So you want to suggest adding 200,000 to the countywide hospitality tourism economic development bucket?
Yes, and then but that would be brought back for grants or for requests. Would be brought back to the committee.
Madam Chair, I would be good with adding 200,000 for that economic recovery category for hospitality.
Same.
Okay.
And I'm good with
Okay,
Parkett. I'm not sure, I got kind of muddled there on the Parkett question, but I'm okay with that, 25,000.
Okay, so we have support to move $200,000 into the total bucket for economic recovery, countywide hospitality tourism. We have 2 voices for Parkett. We have consent to move the wine signs, utilize to pre-fund the wine signage from that bucket of money. And we will defer to the Economic Development Committee to bring back some more detailed recommendations about how to fully expend the remainder of that $2 million for countywide hospitality tourism economic recovery. Is that a summary? Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for working our way through that detailed list of requests. Okay, next up we have, so that was item number 8, which was County Administrative Office, starting at page 161. Next we have the County Administrative Office non-departmental, which starts on page 191. Mr. Vega, is anything more to add to that to get us started in that conversation?
Just waiting for any direction or comments.
Perfect. So this includes our development set-aside conversation. So this is CAO non-departmental, item 9 on our agenda with, starting on page 191. Any comments, thoughts, feedback? I can jump in. Just one correction, the policy considerations section of this erroneously identifies the Monterey County Business Council as being a development set-aside agency in receipt of 6% of the TOT, but I'm pretty sure that that should actually be listed as the Monterey County Convention and Visitors Bureau. And then there are some changes being suggested to the development set-aside calculation using previous years to set the amount that we would be contributing. So just checking in to see if everyone is on the same page and comfortable with that.
Yeah, I we're on that committee. I think that's something that formula was put together 16, 17 years ago, and every year we say, well, we're going to revisit that someday, because some agencies are coming in and saying, wait a minute, why not us? We're contributing more than the Arts Council, the film people, and we ought to be getting some of that money. And so every year we talked about, as a board, we have to go back and maybe revisit that. The reason they did this is to just keep this from happening. Everybody's saying, oh, I want some of that, so they set it back. But it was developed long before any of us were on the board, and I think when we get our economic development director on there, we ought to take and have that discussion. But it ought to be not just two of us on the committee. It ought to be the whole board that looks at that.
So one option would be to reserve the $778,000 of the increase to the DSA so that our new economic development director could have some funds available to work with as they come on board.
Well, I discussed that with Dwayne. He thought of all the years we shouldn't do that. He thought, I brought that forward to Dwayne, and at least Dwayne thought this was the year that we should fully fund it and move forward with it, but I'll leave it open for Dwayne.
I agree with fully funding.
Okay.
I agree with fully funding.
Well, we've got 3 for fully funding then. And then the only other request that came in that was for, I think it may have been for economic, for the development set aside, but that could easily fall into some of the employment economic recovery pieces, was a request from the Monterey County Business Council. So I would support or ask that the Economic Development Committee, or the committee who's going to be looking at how to spend our ARPA funds, consider that request from the Monterey County Business Council as we think about how to spend those funds down.
I was going to mention that. I'm glad you did. When the pandemic hit, and we were trying to get money from the various programs to the employees to the things, it was the business council that my office went to that was connecting our restaurants to how they could apply for it and everything. So I think some of that $2 million we have set aside should go to business council, because they're the most active of bringing about what we needed to get done. So.
Yeah, no, they definitely stepped up when it mattered. Supervisor Adams.
I really concur that the Business Council has really stepped up, and the way it's being run is wonderful. I do not, however, agree to take it out of the hopefully agreed upon current set aside. So I would want this to be additional funding that would come in for the Monterey County Business Council, which I think is really warranted.
So not from the development set aside, but from the ARPA economic recovery pot that was just agreed to, the $2 million there.
And how much did they request, the Business Council?
It was
I don't know that that's
under $100,000.
They have $100,000 now, and I was looking for another $100,000 for them.
So they, within the decisions we've already made, they've got 100.
Well, in the development, they get $100,000 out of the development set aside. I would be good of adding another $100,000 already out of our $2 million we have sitting there, like we did the other one, and pull that directly to them, because they are doing an amazing job. So
I could support that as well.
I support that also.
Okay, so that's Supervisor Alejo or Lopez. Do you want to add anything to that conversation? Okay. Anything else for Supervisor Lopez?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. So your face popped up on my screen. It was okay. So I think, is there anything else under item number 9, CAO non-departmental? Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 10, which is our Human Resources Department. This is on page 217 of the budget book. Is there any thoughts, comments, feedback, questions? Supervisor Alejo.
Yeah, as the chair of the HR committee, I just wanted to, first of all, really commend our HR staff who have done a tremendous job this year. I think over the last 2-3 years under Irma's leadership and her awesome team, they have really moved forward to do a lot of improvements in technology and policies and procedures. I mean, they've every presentation at HR, I'm very impressed with the quality and professionalism of the entire team. But I know that there was some requests that Irma made, because I know her demand needs have increased substantially over the last couple years. So just wanted to give her an opportunity. If there was a position that she really said, I really need this year, I wanted to give her opportunity to address that need.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo. And good morning, board members and members of the public. There were 2 positions that I did get support from the budget office. They restored 2 of the vacant positions, and so they're keeping me whole. But I was also in need of 2 additional positions to support our classification unit. We have been inundated with requests for classwork, so we did get 2 additional positions for this new fiscal year. The other 2 additional augmentations that I requested was a media specialist. At our presentations that we've had before the board HR committee, we've had our student intern who has been very vital in creating our videos that we've been using. She's also been in charge of our social media platforms and putting the word out about our vacancies. And I know some of our board members do tweet our positions, but this is a key position. The student intern is just a temporary position, and don't know if I'm going to have the funds to continue that for this next fiscal year. Hence, I requested a multimedia specialist position at a cost of approximately $92,000 a year. In addition, I requested a personnel technician to help support our labor and employee relations unit. As you know, I've used Ariana, who has assisted and been my right hand during this whole COVID and the building of these new policies and working directly with our labor groups. So we requested a personnel tech position, and the cost of that is
Irma, but
yes.
So out of the positions, you said you were kept whole, but did you get any additional staffing from this current fiscal year?
I did. I received 2 additional associate analysts to support our class and comp unit.
That's what I thought. I knew you had made the request, but it was included in the budget, and that's why I just wanted to make sure we were taking care of you. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo. Any other HR, Supervisor Adams?
Yeah, I just have a question. With the transfer of the positions from the former RMA to HRD, I understand that there's an agreement with the Public Works Department that Public Works and Human Resources will enter into a 1-year pilot memorandum of agreement related to the transfer of the 3 HR positions, and that provides for specific levels of service. And I just want to make sure that the concerns, not just of Public Works, but also of HCD will be met. And I just want to make sure that the concerns that we've heard from department heads about not having the same capacity for recruitment and hires, considering the fact that particularly with HCD, there's so much turnover in that department. I just want to ensure that there's going to be enough staffing to really be able to fill those positions, and that there will be a real focus on those positions. So if Ms. Ramirez-Val could just ensure that that's how it's going to go, or maybe that's not how it's going to go, and I want to know how it is going to go.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Supervisor Adams. So I did meet with our Director of Public Works and Facilities and Parks, Randy Ishii, and I also met with Mike Novo, our Director of Housing and Community Development. So we're not calling it a memorandum of understanding because we don't have agreements with departments to departments, but we definitely have, we created a document that indicated and outlined what are the service levels that HR is going to provide. In essence, really, nothing's really going to change. The individuals that are the HR analysts and the technicians, technician that is assigned to the department will continue to do the work. Those individuals coming in and being in my budget, so to speak, merely is for us to continue to support the departments to ensure that the work is getting done. As Supervisor Askew and Supervisor Alejo are aware, we've built some new processes that are transparent. It's called an HR tracker. We want our HR analysts to be using that tracker that shows how we do recruitments, how we can be efficient. So it's just bringing them into the fold, so we're being more transparent and efficient in how we do work. I certainly hope that the service is not going to decline, but actually going to improve because of the new systems that we have put in place. So those analysts will still continue to be assigned to support their departments. Nothing's changed. So I just hope that our new team joining us is going to be able to have improved services.
Thank you. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to keep us apprised of how that's going.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to say that I'm very pleased that we were able to include the dedicated positions for class and comp studies. We currently have 80 outstanding requests for class and comp studies, but I know that there are many more departments who've just been waiting to submit. And this is one way that we as a county ensure that our employees are working within their job description and are paid fairly for the work that they're doing. So I look forward to continuing to talk about how those class and comp studies are prioritized through the HR committee and monitoring how we're able to work our way through all of those. So with that, I don't see any other comments or questions regarding HR, so we will move forward to our item number 11, which is Human Resources Non-Departmental. This is on page 230 of the budget book. Is there any comments or questions, issues, direction related to item number 11? I'm not seeing anyone. Good, okay. So we'll move on to item number 12. Item number 12 is our Civil Rights Office, starting on page 239 of the budget book. Is there any comments or questions for the recommended budget for Civil Rights Office? Supervisor Adams.
I did notice that they had a huge CalCap credit that exceeded costs, and I was just wondering if I could understand why they had such a huge credit.
Good morning, Supervisor Juan Rodriguez, the Civil Rights Officer. I will have to defer to Mr. Vega probably to explain CalCap, if he's around.
I think I am around. Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for that. I think that the best individual to speak about the CalCap, specifically on credits, will be the auditor controller. I have an understanding of CalCap, but I would rather that they speak about the CalCap methodology that they're using and why it results in a large credit for the Civil Rights Office. Do we have anybody from the auditor's office on the line? Anybody from the auditor's office that will be willing to speak about this topic in particular?
It looks like we have some hands raised under attendees. Are we bringing them over? Okay, perfect. Yep, hang tight. We're bringing them over.
Yes, good morning, Supervisor Askew and the members of the board and the public and the attendees. Ezekiel Vega, thank you for transferring the question to my office. I believe that the credit that may be being referred to is coming from the budget office. So the process that we have in place is to provide the CalCap allocation amount to the departments as well as the budget office. And then budget office actually incorporates the figures into each department's budget. So budget, as far as the budget amounts are concerned, it is outside of my office's purview. And so I'm not sure if this is directly relating to how the amounts are reflected in the budget, because that will be outside of my purview. However, I can look into the information further for the Civil Rights Office and get back to Supervisor Adams, as well as coordinate further with Ezekiel Vega.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rupa, for that. So I just wanted to clarify that the amount that is included as part of the budget is the exact same amount that is provided as a cost allocation plan or CalCap. So all we do is include the amount that is provided on those reports, and a decision was made overall as a county that the CalCap amounts are going to be included as part of the budget. So in general, the way that the CalCap works is that the costs that are included as part of the cost plan, they look at the estimated cost for the coming year. They look at the costs that were incurred a couple of years in arrears, and then do a reconciliation between what happened a couple of years ago and what is expected to be the cost on the upcoming budget year. And then a calculation is made by the Auditor Controller's Office and developed the CalCap plan. And what we do from departments and the overall county as a whole is that we take that amount that is incorporated from the CalCap and then just enter that into the budget system, the exact same amount that is calculated in the Auditor Controller's Office. So I think if anyone will be interested in specific details as to how the CalCap works and the specific mechanics on how the amounts are calculated, I think that the Auditor's Office will be able to provide that information. But in terms of budgeting, I could tell you just very clearly that the amount that is included in the budget book is exactly the same amount that is provided to us by the Auditor Controller's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Vega.
Does that answer the question? Okay, perfect. I just want to appreciate that we are including funding for ASL and Spanish interpretation in the Civil Rights Office. I do want to make sure that we have communication occurring and available in all of the ways that our community receives information. And the only other thing I want to highlight on this one was within the budget book, it talked about only 3% of our county management employees have completed their civil rights training requirement this past year. I know it was an exceptional year, but do want to just encourage all of our county management employees to get their civil rights training done. With that, any other comments or questions for this department item? All right, we'll move on to item number 13, which is our Auditor Controller departmental budget, starting on page 245 of the budget book. Any comments, questions, feedback, direction? Speak now. Hearing none, we can move on to item number 14, which is our Auditor Controller non-departmental section of the budget book, starting on page 258. Any comments, questions, feedback, direction? Okay, moving along to item number 15 on our agenda, which is our Treasurer Tax Collector, starting on page 261 of the budget book. I see we have our Treasurer Tax Collector, Mary Zeeb, on the line. If she wants to add anything, but it looks like we're good to go on this. Okay, we'll move on to item number 16, which is our Assessor, County Clerk, Recorder, item page 273 of the budget book. Speak now. All right, we'll move on to item number 17, which is County Council Department, starting on page 283 of the budget book. We've still got Supervisor Lopez and Alejo with us, right?
Not at all. Just kidding. Yes.
Okay, want to make sure we didn't miss anyone.
Nope.
All right. Okay, very good. We'll move on to item number 18, which is County Council non-departmental, starting on page 291 of the budget book. All right, moving right along to item number 19, which is our clerk of the board, starting on page 297 of the budget book. Comments, feedback, direction? Okay, item number 20 is elections department, page 303 of the budget book. I will just briefly comment that we had incredible voter turnout in 2021 with 80% of our registered voters voting in the election in a pandemic. So want to recognize and give some credit where credit's due to our election team for their phenomenal work this past year. Moving on to we're now into public safety, criminal justice. Item number 21 on our agenda, starting with emergency communications on page 309. Okay, we can move on to item number 22, which is the district attorney's department, page 333 of our budget book. Any thoughts, comments? I did want to briefly highlight that the conviction integrity attorney was added via the augmentation process, and I look forward to hearing updates about some of the work that position does. Seeing no other comments, feedback, direction, we'll continue along to item number 23, which is child support services on page 343. I just had a brief comment on this one. I'm just appreciating the Board of Supervisors' direction at our budget workshop to meet the needs of the department through augmentation. We've been able to get some additional funds through the state that have allowed $200,000 in discretionary funds to be returned back to our board to support some of our other funding requests that we're spending money on. And I just appreciate the work that this department does, taking care of families in our community. Moving along to item number 24 on our agenda today, we have the public defender starting on page 349 of the budget book. All right, let's see here. Item number 25 on our agenda today is the probation department, starting on page 397 of the budget book. Any comments, feedback, direction? All right, we can move along to item number 26, which is land use and the environment section. Item number 26 is our agricultural commissioner, starting on page 417 of the budget book. Seeing no comments, we'll move on to item number 27, which is our housing and community development department. This is starting with page 433 in our budget book. Supervisor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. I think, first off, I just want to appreciate very much the additional funding that has been put into this department. I think it's really a critical one, and we have a lot of information that we need to, a lot of work that we need to do, a lot of work that we have ahead of us. One of the things I'm conscious of is that we received a letter of a request from the Hospitality Association to add funding to this year's budget for enforcement for the vacation rentals, for short-term rentals. And I'm sorry, I can't look at you, Madam Chair, because I've been told I have to look completely straight ahead and keep my face into the microphone. So even though I want to look at you, I can't turn my head, nor you either, my colleague over here on my left. But at any rate, I'm taking their... That was the day. Okay, here we go. Now I'm going to smile for the rest of the meeting. Oh, but I can't look at anybody. Forgive me for all of this silliness. But at any rate, we've gotten
a lot of letters for support for the 2 additional planners, so that's, that's really good. That was recommended in the budget, and I'm very thankful for that. But going back to the comments regarding the enforcement request for short-term rentals or vacation rentals that we've received from the Hospitality Association and the hospitality industry, in the 2018 board communication to the Planning Commission, I want to just quote this. It said, "The board is not in support of increasing funding for code enforcement, but will reconsider that issue once an ordinance is developed. However, we are clear that there is an urgency to complete the ordinance along with the need to continue with enforcement efforts to manage the current short-term rental situation and reduce community division on this topic." And I think despite the board's recognition of the urgency to complete the ordinance, it's now approaching more than 3 years since those statements were made, and the new draft ordinance still remains in development. During the same period, known unpermitted vacation rental operations, as evidenced by the TOT registrations, rose from approximately 400 in June of 2018 to 658 in December of 2020. I bring this forward because what we have created is an unfair playing field for the hospitality, the hoteliers, particularly throughout the county. And whether it's in the county or in the cities, it's really an issue that I think we simply have got to face. And the only way that we're going to lasso in the issues that we have around short-term rentals or vacation rentals, as they're now commonly called, is if we have the opportunity for some real enforcement and some teeth in enforcement. And I look at enforcement in this regard, particularly in light of the vacation rentals, but I look at enforcement in other elements of the Housing and Community Development Department around special events. Particularly, we had an incident this weekend in Big Sur that was just incredible. It was just such a dereliction of, I don't even know how to describe it, except that big events are going on. We should be enforcing the rules that we have, and we simply are not able to do that. And I think the only way that we're going to be able to do that is to really have some teeth in enforcement, and I support the Monterey County Hospitality Association and all the hoteliers in the county who really want to see us put some real finances behind enforcement, and this would be the appropriate place for that to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Adams. And I think my understanding is that we will be incorporating enforcement within the ordinance and the budget that was developed, that is being developed for the vacation rental ordinance coming forward. So I think my inclination would be to work those positions through that process and fund those positions through that program.
I would be supportive of that if this were my first rodeo. But unfortunately, I've watched this ordinance just languish, and I don't have confidence that we're going to get it done as immediately as it needs to be done. I don't know if any of my other colleagues feel supportive of this or not.
Well, not at this time. I am meeting with code enforcement because we have a big concern with what happens in North County, a lot of the loud parties and stuff. And the problem is that the sheriff has to go out there when they can get out there and find the place. But then what they do, and then the enforcement part of it is with code enforcement. And so we're having a meeting again because we got more complaints, and I was contacted by the Weekly. And we're having a meeting to see maybe they can have a code enforcement person that's on duty, that like for us, the sheriff can coordinate it with them and something like that. So we're looking to see if there's a possibility of beefed up code enforcement for what Mary's talking about, but also for what we're doing out there. But I don't think we can approach it on a budget thing now, but I just that's a concern.
So, Madam Chair, if I just chime in on that, I think that perennially code enforcement itself is an understaffed, underfunded operation. And that I think if the board were inclined to want to increase code enforcement, it's something that I think that the Division of Code Enforcement within Housing and Community Development would certainly welcome it. And especially in these times where interactions with the public can quickly escalate into very challenging situations. They're very touchy situations. People, especially if you go out to a party where there's a lot of drinking going on and a lot of young folks there, and that they get their hackles raised pretty quickly. So, and then similarly, the middle of the night calls for handling something like a vacation rental. Those are really challenging. Now, I think that if there was an inclination by the board to help to increase the funding and support there, I think that the Code Enforcement Division would certainly welcome it. It is a never-ending challenge that I've witnessed for many years.
Supervisor Lopez.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiments of Supervisor Phillips. Obviously, there's concerns around staffing levels, but I'd prefer that, again, we do an analysis of need and come back. I don't think we can do that during the budget process, flat out pick a number. So I agree that, code enforcement is understaffed. I really appreciate Joshua Bowling and his leadership. He's done some incredible things there with the staff he has, but, if we're going to assess this, it has to be done in a different process that comes forward with a clear delineation about need and what those enforcement not only duties are, but also priorities, because I think for us as a board, we all have different priorities that we need to lay out.
And Madam Chair, I'm in agreement with that as well, knowing that the ordinance, we're much closer than we've ever been. And it'd be nice to sync those when we actually get the ordinance finalized with a better enforcement program. I think we're not that far off at this point in time. So I think more to come on this.
All right, so maybe what we have is a consensus that we really want to get this vacation rental ordinance moved through the process with all due speed and urgency. So that could be the direction that we're giving as part of this. I'm hearing agreement on that right now. Supervisor Adams.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with this, though. I mean, listening to all of us, enforcement in general, not just for short-term rentals, but enforcement in general is really an issue. And if we don't put something if we don't handle it through the budgeting situation, when do we do so? I appreciate very much what you're saying about the ordinance and that we can, say that what we want it to do is be funded from TOT, and I think that's exactly what we should do for vacation rentals. But when you talk about the noise issues that go on, when you talk about the fireworks in the middle of the night, you talk about a variety of things that all of us are experiencing with enforcement. If we don't handle it in the budget department, in the budget hearings that we're having now, when are we going to be able to do it? I support what Charles, our CAO, was saying about that.
I just think we even though it's hard to make decisions like this when we're at the budget and we don't have all the information we need, just like we talked about Laguna Seca, but I think we could revisit it, and maybe the answer is to bring in some temporary help, an annuitant, a retired sheriff's deputy or something like that, or someone who retired from there to beef up and to help enforcement on weekends only and be available at it. So there may be something we can analyze that a little bit, and I'm going to be talking to code enforcement. Maybe I have someone from CAO's office there with us when we're talking about how we can expedite things a little bit better. But there may be a shorter term fix for it while we're looking at the long range.
So what I would suggest is that we ask Code Enforcement and Housing and Community Development to come back to the board with a kind of a planned presentation on both their needs overall and how, their priorities. I think as Supervisor Lopez was saying, their main priority is health and safety first, and then, they go down the list. So maybe to bring something to the board on the priorities, the challenges that they have, and maybe a plan to seek some additional staffing and financial support to implement.
Thank you.
Right.
And as I said, I brought this up because of the letter that we received from MCHA.
Great, thank you. And hopefully we don't spend down our whole contingency today, and we will be able to engage in some of these conversations over the course of the year with some more thoughtful dialogue with staff. I did just want to really thank our budget team for figuring out how to get the long-term planning positions added into HCD. I feel very strongly that we have these positions in place to focus specifically on streamlining affordable housing development in the county. I expect to see progress on our pending ADU referral. I look forward to getting updates on the inclusionary in lieu fee ordinance that needs to be updated, is long overdue for updating. There are many other policies, such as those presented through the MBEP housing white paper, that serve to reduce the cost, reduce the risk, and make it easier and more streamlined for building housing that is affordable for our workforce. So I'm pleased to see these two positions, and I look forward to having them focus specifically on streamlining housing affordability for development of affordable housing in Monterey County. So thank you, budget staff, for getting these in, and thank you, HCD, for dedicating the two positions. All right, with that, is there any other comment? Are we good to proceed? Supervisor Lopez and Alejo, thumbs up? Yep, everyone's good?
Good.
Okay. Okay, fabulous. All right, so that was item number 27. We are now moving on to item number 28, which is our library, Monterey County Free Libraries. This is page 563 of the county budget book. Any comments, direction, feedback for our library? I will just briefly add that the county has made promises to the East Garrison community in terms of library building, library services, library programs. We're going to need to have a very clear plan to deliver on those promises in the coming year, and we will work with Hillary and the library team to work within the existing revenue sources that the library has, but also will remain committed to delivering on the promises that were made to that community. Any other library comments? Okay, we'll move on to item number 30, which is Natividad Medical Center, page 577 of the budget book. We spoke earlier under the health department about requesting that Natividad add $500,000 to fund expansion of Esperanza Care. Supervisor Alejo, did you want to speak to that again briefly, or?
I thought we got the votes to expand the 500,000 yesterday.
Yep, we did.
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right. And the only thing I would add in terms of the Esperanza Care funding, I think it's incredibly generous that Natividad continues to fund that program. And I think that one of the things that we could talk about doing in the coming year is reaching out and inviting some of our other local healthcare providers to support that program as well. Okay, we are now at the end of our budget book, so we will give our budget staff a chance to summarize all of the feedback that they've received. Do the supervisors want to make any closing comments? This would be a chance for any final comments, any wrap-up comments.
I think after we see the list, we still have to go through this most.
You want to see the list first? Okay, perfect. So let's.
Then we'll know what we actually accomplished at the end of it. This is the hard part here.
Okay, perfect. Hang tight just a second here. Let me confer.
Yeah. No, well, I'd asked Dwayne and Ezekiel whether they want to go to those other special district first or finish out the board of the county budget.
And it was just brought to my attention, I skipped number 29 on our agenda. My apologies. So number 29 is our cooperative extension on page 569 of the budget book. Is there any Any feedback or direction for cooperative extension? All right, seeing none, we've completed all of our departments. Mr. Vega and Mr. Woods, would you like to take a break, or are you ready to bring us back our summary?
I think Mr. Vega's here. He's ready to go. Are you ready, Mr. Vega?
I am. So I'm
putting him on the spot.
Yeah, and Mr. Vega and Madam Chair, just I think I know there might be some comments on different departments. I understand there might be some comments in relation to the sheriff's office when you get to that one, including me. I have a comment on that one also.
Okay, so this is what we put together. So thank you to all our staff who have been working in the background trying to keep everything straight. So I'm going to start just going through what we believe we heard from the board members. So the order that will take this conversation is that we'll go by department. So the way that we were discussing this is by department. So we'll also be going by department to ensure that we're not missing anything. So to start, what we have heard is that under the CAO's department, the board, as a majority, has recommended funding for the Salinas Valley Promise for $250,000 for 1 year, with the potential discussion for the next fiscal year. Also, the Salinas Soccer Complex, $250,000. Also funding for the Aromas Park for $250,000. The Wine Corridor signage for $250,000. And the Monterey County Business Council funding for $100,000. Of all of this, the funding, I think that Dwayne is sharing the screen of the file that I'm looking at. And the funding that we are proposing to be used for these particular items based on the feedback that we received from the Board of Supervisors is also shown to the right, where you see cannabis growth is being proposed to use for the Salinas Valley Promise, as well as the Aromas Park, where contingencies are being proposed to be used for the Salinas Soccer Complex, and Arpa funding is proposed to be used for the Wine Corridor signage, as well as the Monterey County Business Council amounts. Moving on also into the CAO's department, we also heard the new communications director to be funded. Right now, the spreadsheet shows funding for $245,000 for a full year, but it depends on some of the conversation that we have from the board is that with the potential phase out the TMD contract, we don't know when that will occur. So it could be like 9 months of funding, depending on when this actually occurs. Right now, we're showing 100% funding. Also, we're looking at funding for a new management analyst. That's the Sustainability Infrastructure Program. That's one FTE also that will be funded out of contingencies. And also, we heard that there was a requirement to increase or to bring back the legislative contracts to the 2016-17 level for $103,000. That will also be funded out of contingencies. In the health department, we heard that the wage replacement stipend will be funded at $100,000. We are proposing ARPA funding for that. Also, the public health lab HVAC issues, we are proposing $180,000 and using also ARPA funding for that. The next is $1.5 million for the Pathway to Recovery for Children program. Also will be coming out of ARPA funding. Also, we had heard that the face covering ordinance will have to be reduced and only provide funding for $55,000. So this negative amount of $165,000 accomplishes what the direction of the board was. And that initially was being recommended out of the cannabis growth funding. So we're putting money back into the cannabis growth revenue. But also in the same health department, we heard that funding for a half FTE for a deputy public guardian also will be funded there. And we're also recommending cannabis revenue growth for that, since in the past, the board has also funded similar type of requests from cannabis revenue. Also, we heard the Axela software to be funded in the health department. We are funding the contingencies. The accounting technician also for the public guardian and health department also funded contingencies. The health headquarters HVAC replacement for $250,000. Also contingencies funding that for $250,000. And then the health headquarters water intrusion for up to $1.8 million. Estimates were provided to us from 1.2 to 1.8. We're including here the higher amount until we determine that what the actual amount will be. We are initially funding these other contingencies, but we will also be looking, based on the comments that were made by the board, to looking at the Building Improvement and Replacement Fund to see how much is available in that fund. And then we may use some of that funding as well, but for now, we're placing down the contingencies bucket. Also, regarding the information technology department, there was overall support from the board to fund all the different broadband categories that were presented. And we're proposing a funding that out of Arpa on infrastructure, and then also the Esperanza program and the NMC, and out of the NMC budget. For the public works and facility programs, we have the Laguna Sewer project. We had heard from the board that they wanted to add it for $1.45 million also, in addition to this water project that was being proposed as the recommended budget. So in the recommended budget, we had proposed $1.9 million for a water project, and we understood from the board that also $1.4 million were being recommended also for the sewer project at Laguna Seca, and that we're using ARPA funds for that. Also funding for CSDs and CSAs up to $4.1 million also coming from ARPA. And then we also heard that we were repurposing late funding, reducing that amount by $3.1 million. In addition to that, we also understood that an accounting technician will be restored for public works. We are seeing contingencies for that, plus the providing funding for the floodplain management program for $347,000 funding out of contingencies. In addition to that, $207,000 were being proposed for the demolition of the old public defender building, which is also funded out of contingencies, and then also funding for the Pajaro CSD overall management, $394,000 funded out of contingencies. In addition to that, in the public works department also, we heard that there was support to fund the finance manager, the management analyst positions, and those two positions are funded by the road fund. So that's why you don't see a dollar amount here, but they will be funded out of the road fund. For the jail sewer backup system, we also heard that to remove that out of the ARPA plan, so we are removing that from the infrastructure category. Also in the sheriff's department, we had heard support to add management analyst 3 for $139,000 for the contingencies, and also $126,000 in funding for the new digital forensic position. We also had heard overall from the board to restore 9 unfunded positions. I think that we had heard on this one that it was 5 actually. So wanted to just get that clarification overall from the board. We had some staff that thought that it was 9 or 5. So I think it'll be important to just clarify from the board what that is. So at this point, we're changing it to 5, unless we hear a specific indication from the board otherwise.
I believe it was 9. It was 9.
I heard 9.
And Wendy and I agreed with that.
Okay, so we'll change it back to 9, the number that we had.
But that's 9 unfunded, correct?
Yes.
Right.
I'd like to talk to that issue. I had the opportunity last evening to have some conversations with my residents, the people who live in the 5th District, who expressed some grave concern about the decision. And I would choose to change my vote from that time, from the one that we voted on earlier, and ask that we restore 10 of the status quo positions, 5 of them with funding. I believe that there were 2 people who had voted for that positively before, and if those 2 people want to continue in that position, then I think we should make the change here, and I assume that this is the right place to do that.
You are correct. This is the right time to open that for discussion again. Right now, we're just discussing what was first. So I think let's not highlight that row so we can go back to it, and then you will just finalize with the last item on what we also heard from the board. On the social services department, we heard also that there will be funding specifically for the remodeling of the military and veteran affairs offices for $765,000 funded out of contingencies. And so I think that the only item that remains in question from this list, unless we hear otherwise right now, is the 9 positions for the sheriff's department. So I return this back to you to the board for discussion for appropriate direction on that. And then we will also start after the discussion is over, we will also be showing what the impact of all of this is on the ARPA overall funding, and also what the overall impact is to contingencies, and also for the cannabis growth revenue, how much we still have available. But I think for now, I'll turn back the discussion back to you to discuss the sheriff's positions, in particular the 9 positions that were already approve as we heard 9, but you want to change that, it's up to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ezequiel Vega, for keeping track of all of our conversation and having it so well organized and categorized. Speaking to Supervisor Adams, we did definitely hear if Supervisor Adams, if you were switching to 10 positions in the Sheriff's Office, 5 funded, 5 unfunded, I believe that Supervisor Phillips had already voiced support for that,
I did.
as had Supervisor Lopez. So
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think that there's three voices to support that change. I would love to get a copy of this printed in front of me. It's difficult to keep track of all the details on the screen here. So if we could make that request to have this sent out right away so we can have it printed, that would be great. And I do see Lori Medina with Department of Social Services has her hand raised, so I'll pass it over to Lori for clarifying questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question, and I don't know if this was to the board members or to Ezequiel. I thought there was still some discussion at play about the $250,000 for rental assistance, and then some discussion about what the right number was for Project Roomkey. I thought there might have been support yesterday at some level for those items, and I don't see it on this.
Right, we did say we were going to bring it back for this discussion right now.
And so I have notes that there was support for the $250,000 of rental assistance. But maybe we have that discussion right now. It's definitely something that I would be supportive of.
I'm supportive as well, Madam Chair, and I think we're only going to use it if people apply and eligibility. Otherwise, it will not be utilized. So, but we need a third.
Yes, yep. Is there support for? Is there a third voice in support of $250,000 for rental assistance that would supplement those who are in precarious situations that don't qualify for the state or federal rental assistance dollars?
Can I ask, do we know where we are right now in terms of the funding we've allocated?
That's a great question, Supervisor Lopez. Do we have that in front of us yet?
Yes, we do. And when you're speaking of the different funding sources, we do have a summary. And Dwayne, I think if you scroll down on the screen that you're showing, Dwayne, you'll be able to see some of the summary of where we are. We will, for contingencies, it looks like we have exceeded our amount, if the amount there is correct. So we will have to go back, and depending on what the conversation will be. And then also we have the use of Arpa on where we are. I think that is best to take a little bit of time to verify that these numbers are fully correct, but this is what we have so far.
Madam Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, and also we are editing some. Wanted to just point out while I have the opportunity that we also noticed that we were missing the support from the board to fund the IDEMIA contract and the engine parts of it. I think that amounts to almost 533,000. So we'll add that to this spreadsheet as well.
Okay, then
sorry. Let's go Adams and then Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you. Could you please remind me what the total salary was for the communications director?
It is 245,000. That's the way how much we have on the spreadsheet right now.
Okay.
That's salary and benefits. And
sorry, and benefits, exactly. Yeah. So that's terrific. But what I was going to ask, if we would, as a board, would consider, those are the only two, that position and the half public guardian position. Are the only two positions that would be coming out of the cannabis additional money. And I just wonder if it would be possible for us to flip it, to take funding from that is in the contingency plan now, that is one-time funding, and build that against cannabis, and then take the two staffing positions of the communications director and the half public guardian and have those come out of contingency so that we simply keep, I don't know, it wasn't a promise, but it certainly has been a practice that we would not fund staffing positions and ongoing expenses out of the cannabis fund unless they were totally related to the cannabis work. So if that would be something that we could do, I would really appreciate that very much.
If I could, this is Dwayne Woods with County Administrative Office. The funding sources are going to have to be flexible because we're still working on the actual amounts, and that will be brought back to the top of the budget. But if we take a look at what has been used already as preliminary for 8.8 million, and contingencies doesn't have that much in, so we're going to have to pull from other sources.
Right, so I'm just asking to flip it, right?
Even with those two. Well, yeah, I'm just saying, sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can, yeah, that's better.
Yes, so we're going to have to work on where the funding sources are coming from because we're already overextended on the use of contingencies. So we may have to go to cannabis growth even more, or we may have to go to backfill revenue for ARPA funds. So, but we can take that direction from the board. If I hear three that want to definitely not use those positions, cannabis growth, and we'll keep that in mind when we try to get to balance.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a position about where or how they're funded. I think that's what I leave to the budget staff. So if that's what Supervisor Adams would feel more comfortable with, I'm comfortable supporting that request. I think I heard, was it Supervisor Lopez voicing? But I see Supervisor Alejo's hand raised.
Yeah, Madam Chair. I think we. I don't know if it merits a break at this point, but I think I know it's hard to do this right on the spot, like our staff tried to do it under the best of circumstances. But I know there was another 3.4 million set aside for these kind of community requests. I know our staff had knew that there was going to be some requests coming from the community, so there was like 3.3 set aside that's not being utilized here in terms of being able to pay down some of these costs. I think this is the first budget in the last 5 years that I've seen that all our contingencies are swallowed up even before we start the new fiscal year. I don't think that's very prudent as the chair of the budget committee. But also, I just want to warn all our colleagues that we're in negotiations with all our bargaining units, and that's going to be a hefty price tag that we're going to have to pay, and that's not accounted here. About how we're going to pay for those increased benefits, which will be in the millions of dollars. So I hate our county to be put in a situation where we're just saying, put money here, put money there, without much thought that we have a big balloon payment coming in our collective bargaining negotiations that we will have to pay. And I just want us today to be cognizant of that. The money is not limitless, and so I think also here if the majority just approved 5 new sheriff funded positions, how much is that price tag? So, and where are we gonna take that funding is also a question that hasn't been answered yet at this point in time. So 5 is 700 and almost 700 over $700,000 here. So pretty significant. So I hope that we would take some time here to better. I know we're going to come back to this at the end of the month for final approval of the budget, but I think there needs to be some adjustments in where the funding is coming from to not completely deplete our contingencies. That every year we depend on that funding being there for emergency situations that do come up throughout the year. But I also think the 3.4 million needs to be utilized here and was set aside for this very purpose.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo, and I just echo your concern about fully expending our contingency fund going into this year. I tried to make my comments loud and clear along the way that we do have a commitment to our employees, and the funds that we spend today are funds that will not be available for us to adequately compensate our staff who has worked so hard this year. So the 2 questions that I heard you ask. So we just added $700,000 to fund sheriff deputy positions. I would like to say, where do we find that? Where are we going to pull $700,000 out of this list would be a question that I have to go back. And then the other question that I have that I'll back up Supervisor Alejo on to Dwayne and Ezekiel is, was there additional funds set aside? Where were the additional funds set aside for community requests? And has that been included already in the total assignment use list here?
If I could, this is Dwayne with the County Administrative Office. So what we have listed here is just initial thoughts on use of funding sources, but we have, as Supervisor Alejo mentioned, there's 3.4 million of ARPA funds for revenue backfill that is not included. So at this point, really all depending on if the board sticks with these items, what we just need from the board is if they would, the order of use of those funds to get to balance. So we have 3.4 additional million we can use for ARPA backfill. We have contingencies, we have cannabis growth, and we have, ARPA is self-explanatory. So those are the sources we have that we will utilize. And if the board's preferences first go to the revenue backfill, then go to the contingencies, and then go to any cannabis growth, then that's the way we'll do it. Or if the board wants to arrange us going to those funding sources any other way, you can let us know.
And I think maybe, okay, thank you, Dwayne. And so I think maybe the big question is, to my colleagues is, are there any of these areas that we can trim a little bit so as not to fully expend our contingencies and cannabis funds? Where would there be consensus to trim on anything listed in this, on this list?
I think what Supervisor Alejo said, if I have trouble reading on these things, if we could maybe have it printed out and take a break and look at it, it would be helpful for me. There was three things I wanted to point out. Business Council, we said 100,000, but that was 100,000 in addition to what they were getting on in development set aside. IT was listed at 4.2, but that was over 3 years. I just think, and then face covering, I thought we had scaled that down to 55,000. If that, maybe that's there, but
the face covering is there, Supervisor.
At 55.
It's at 55. It's one. We can email this.
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock right now. If we could get this sent out to all of the board members, printed for those of us who are in chambers right now, and take 15 minutes to give everyone a chance to kind of look at it. And the question that I would just ask my colleagues is, the two things. So in what order do we want to expend our revenues? And then the second question is, where could we potentially find agreement to trim down what's on this list so that we're not fully expending all of our contingency flexibility for this year. So those would be the two questions I leave us with. We also need to open and close all of our, need to go through all of our additional districts. So maybe if we could do that while we have the list sent out, and then we'll finish that, take a 10-minute break, and then reconvene to continue. Okay, so let's see here. So we are going to call to order the Barronda County Sanitation District. Could we get a roll call by the clerk, please?
Good morning. Let the record reflect all directors are present, with Directors Alejo and Lopez appearing via video conference, and Directors Root, Askew, Adams, and Phillips appearing in person.
All right, we have one item on our consent calendar for Barronda County Sanitation District. Are there any public comments on our Barronda County Sanitation District agenda?
Is this the one where we were, Madam Chair, is this the one where we were already funding the item that appears on consent?
This,
there was something about this one.
Sorry, one-handed here trying to move my papers around.
Oh, sorry, no, never mind. Never mind, it's Pajaro. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Too many vowels.
So all the, yes, okay, very good. So this is the Barronda County Sanitation District, Public Works Facilities and Parks two budget items that are in the recommended budget book. All right.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion from Phillips, a second from Adams. I see no public comment, so I'll close public comment and bring it back for a vote.
Director Alejo?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Lopez?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
And Director Chair Supervisor Ruas. Director
Yes,
Chair
aye.
Ruas.
Thank you. We'll adjourn the Barronda County Sanitation District and call to order the East Garrison Community Services District. Could we get a roll call, please?
Let the record reflect all Let the record reflect all directors are present with Directors Alejo and Lopez appearing via video conference, and Directors Root, Askew, Adams, and Phillips appearing in person.
Great. We have one item on our consent calendar, the East Garrison Community Services District Fund from page 479 of the budget book. Is there any public comment on this consent item? Seeing none, I entertain a
Madam
motion.
Chair, I'd like to pull this item from consent.
We'll pull it from consent.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you very much. I wanted to pull it from consent simply because this was an unfunded augmentation request for the Community Services District. And I just want to ensure that this is a funded item. And I think that we've heard from staff on this, and I just want to make sure that we move forward publicly since it is a funding request. And just in the light of transparency, bring it forward to the public.
So do we have staff who's available to comment on this item? The East Garrison Community Services District.
This is the Pajaro County Sanitation District.
Oh, sorry, no, we finished that one. Sorry, sorry, Mary. We're over to East Garrison. At
I'm
this
sorry,
point.
I'm following the agenda here, and mine comes second. That's what's next. So, okay.
Are we good on that one? I'm good on this one.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Phillips.
Second.
I'll second it from Askew. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment and bring it back for a vote.
Director Alejo?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Lopez?
Aye.
Director Adams?
I'm voting aye on everything.
And Director Chair Root Askew.
Aye. All right, we'll adjourn the East Garrison Community Services District and convene the East Garrison Public Financing Authority. Could we get a roll call, please?
Let the record reflect all directors are present, with Directors Alejo and Lopez appearing via video conference, and Directors Root, Askew, Adams, and Phillips appearing in person.
Fabulous. We have one item on our consent agenda today for East Garrison Public Financing Authority. Is there any public comment on this consent item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
Move consent.
All right.
Second.
I have a motion from Phillips, a second from Adams. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Alejo?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Lopez?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
And Chair Director Root Askew.
Aye. All right, we will adjourn the East Garrison Public Financing Authority. And now we will convene the Pajaro County Sanitation District. Could we get a roll call, please?
Let the record reflect all directors are present, with Directors Alejo and Lopez appearing via video conference, and Directors Root, Askew, Adams, and Phillips appearing in person.
All right, we have consent, one item on the consent calendar for Public Works Facilities and Parks for the Pajaro County Sanitation District. Was this one we had a question about?
I did. I simply
Okay.
said that because it's an unfunded augmentation request for the CSD, I pulled it just to have the opportunity, if there were any staff that wanted to comment on it, before we just took it through as a consent item.
Sure, thank you. Do we have any staff from Public Works Facilities and Parks who can comment on the Pajaro County Sanitation District?
Morning, Chair Askew. This is Sean Ellerby with Public Works Facilities and Parks. I believe the Pajaro augmentation that had been unfunded, this board had taken action on that yesterday to fund that unfunded item.
So do we need to change our action on the consent to align with the direction that we're giving to budget today? How do we handle this?
I'll defer to council.
We're deferring.
If I understand correctly, the issue is how are you funding the augmentation request? So I think you need to ask the budget office what's available at this time to fund this particular augmentation request.
Okay, so punting it over to budget staff to ask what augmentation funding is available at this time to fund this request.
Chair Askew, Ezekiel Vega, thank you for that. So right now, as indicated before in the previous discussions, we're trying to figure out what the best funding available will be. Right now, we have this item tentatively funded using contingencies for the Pajaro Sanitation District, but after we review the overall request that we have received and determine what the best appropriate use of funding will be, then we will be able to provide you what the funding is. But at this point, we don't really have a full picture of what the actual funding will be for this particular request. But as indicated before, right now, it's earmarked for contingencies.
So I would suggest, Chair, maybe you trail this item until you get the full report from budget staff about the priority of funding.
Okay, let's trail this. We'll leave this meeting open and come back to get clarity on that. I'm going to pull this page. Okay. All right, so we are going to recess the Pajaro County Sanitation District, call to order the successor housing agency to the redevelopment agency of the County of Monterey. Could we get a roll call, please?
Let the record reflect all directors are present, with directors Alejo and Lopez appearing via video conference and directors Root, Askew, Adams, and Phillips appearing in person.
We have one item on our consent calendar, Successor Housing Agency, the Castro Pajaro Housing Set-Aside Fund, and the Bronda Housing Set-Aside Fund. Is there any public comment on this consent item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the Board of Supervisors to entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion from Adams, second from Phillips. Could we get a roll call, please?
Director Alejo?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Lopez?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
And Director Chair Root Askew.
Aye. Right, we will adjourn the motion passes. We will adjourn the Successor Housing Agency to the Redevelopment Agency of the County of Monterey and call to order the Board of Supervisors of the Monterey County Water Resource Agency. Could we get a roll call, please?
Let the record reflect all supervisors are present, with Supervisors Alejo and Lopez appearing via video conference and Supervisors Root, Askew, Adams, and Phillips appearing in person.
All right, we do have, are there any additions or corrections to this agenda by the clerk?
There are no additions and corrections.
Okay, we do have one item that was scheduled for yesterday at 1:30 that was continued to today for our continuation meeting. Item number 1 is to hold a public hearing to consider approving and adopting assessment rate changes for 21-22 with a cost of living adjustment of 1.6% for zones 2B, 2Y, and 2Z for the Castroville Seawater Intrusion Project and the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project, and for the CSIP water delivery charge and water service charges. Do we have Erica Leal, an accountant with Water Resources Agency, on the line for a brief presentation?
Yes, I'm right here. Hold on. I thought Gwen is going to speak first. Gwen, are you here?
I am here. So
Okay.
Good morning, Chair Askew and Board of Supervisors. This is Brent Buki, General Manager of the Water Resource Agency. Today, we actually have 3 public hearings and then 1 item to approve our budget. So there'll be 4 total items, and Erica Leal will be here to make these presentations. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Supervisor Askew, members of the board, and members of the public. Erica Liao with the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. And today's action, hold on, I don't know what happened. Yep, I shared the wrong item. Okay, so today's action is to, so I'll be presenting our agency's agenda item 1 to 4. And today's action on item number 1, consider that your board to hold a public hearing today and to approve and adopt a fiscal year 2021-22 COLA increase of 1.6% for zones 2B, 2Y, and 2Z, and the CSAP water delivery and service charge. And this item was presented to the Monterey County Water Resources Agency Board of Directors on April 26, 2021, and recommended its approval by your board. And with a 1.6% COLA increase for fiscal year 2021-22, an estimated total combined revenues increase is at $165,000, with a breakdown here shown on the table with each zone indicated. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics released the February Consumer Price Index on March 10, 2021, with a 1.6% COLA increase. The revenue generated from zones 2B, 2Y, and 2Z provide funding for CSAP and SVRP operation and maintenance, and to make the debt payments to the USBR loans. Water delivery fee provides partial funding for CSAP operation, while the water service fee for SRDF operations. And Zone 2B benefit assessment factor A has an increase of $4.94 per acre compared to last fiscal year. Estimated total amount of revenue generated in zones 2B is about $3.8 million. And here shows the zone 2B boundary map. And water delivery and service fee, which is paid by zone 2B owners to utilize water out of the CSAP pipeline. This table shows rate charges per acre foot, combined revenue generated from water delivery and service fee is about $1.8 million. And this is zone 2Y benefit assessments that shows different charges per acre from factor A, B, C, D, and H. With the total parcel counts in zone 2Y, it will generate estimated total amount of revenue about $1.1 million. And this is a zone 2Y boundary map, and it expands from South County to the Monterey Bay. And zone 2Z benefit assessments with the same factors and shares the same boundary as zone 2Y. Means the property owners within this boundary pay both assessments. With the same parcel counts, zone 2Z will generate estimated total amount of revenue about $3.5 million. And here shows the zone 2Z boundary map, and since it's the same as the zone 2Y, so it shows you the same map. And with the last slide, it had concluded my presentation for the Board of Supervisors to consider holding a public hearing today, as well as to approve and adopt a 1.6% COLA increase in zones 2B, 2Y, and 2Z, water delivery and service fee for fiscal year 2021-22. Now I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Erica, for the presentation. Colleagues, any questions or comments on this item? Nope. Let's take it out to public comment. Is there any public comment on our Water Resources Agency item number 1, public hearing to consider approving and adopting rate assessment charges? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for any discussion or to entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Adams, a second from Phillips, and we'll take a roll call vote.
Supervisor Alejo?
Aye.
Supervisor Phillips?
Aye.
Supervisor Lopez?
Aye.
Supervisor Adams?
Aye.
And Supervisor Chair Root Askew?
Aye. All right, next up, thank you, the motion carries. Next up, we have item number 2 on our agenda to hold a public hearing to consider approving and adopting rate assessment charges for 21-22 with a cost of living adjustment of 1.6% for Zone 2C operations, maintenance, and administration of Nacimiento and and San Antonio dams. Erica, we've got you back again to give a brief
Yes.
presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Askew. So today's action on this item, number 2, is to consider your board to hold a public hearing today to approve and adopt a fiscal year 2021-22 COLA increase of 1.6% for Zone 2C. And as mentioned previously, this item was also presented on April 26, 2021 with an approval recommendation to your board.
Erica, your presentation's not up.
Right here, it's not up.
No.
How about what happened? Oh, it took me out of the share. Hold on.
There you are. Yep.
How about now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So as mentioned previously, this item was also presented to our board, the board of directors on April 26 with an approval recommendation to your board. And the financial impact of Zone 2C with a 1.6% COLA increase on O&M and administration component will have an estimated total revenue increase of just a little over $62,000. And there's no COLA increase on spillway modification and diversion facility components in Zone 2C assessment. And as stated before, 1.6% in COLA increase was released on March 10. The revenue collected from Zone 2C assessments provide funding to the operation and maintenance of Nacimiento and San Antonio dams, and to make debt payments for the Salinas Valley Water Project bond. However, the COLA is only applied to Zone 2C O&M and administration components, as the debt service does not receive an increase. Zone 2C engineers report identify 7 different sub-areas, each receiving different benefits, and so different rate charges apply to different sub-areas per acre. The estimated revenue generated from this assessment is about $3.5 million. And Zone 2C administration has the same sub-areas with equal cost per acre based on land use factors. The estimated revenue generated from this assessment is around $409,000. As mentioned in previous slides, that the Nacimiento spillway modification and diversion facility construction do not receive COLA increase. The rate stays the same as previous years. Total estimated revenue to be generated from this assessment is around $446,000. And as for the diversion facility, only the pressure and east side sub-areas receiving 100% benefits. So only these 2 sub-areas pay the Zone 2C assessment for this component. And the total estimated revenue generated from the diversion facility is about $678,000. And this map, this is Zone 2C boundary map, and it extends from South County to Monterey Bay. And here's the map that shows you different sub-areas. And with the last slide, it had concluded my presentation for Zone 2C assessment. And now I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Any public comment on this item, item number 2 on our Water Resources Agency agenda today? I see no hands raised, so I will bring it back
approval.
to
Lopez.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Lopez with a motion and Supervisor Phillips with a second. We'll take a roll call vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Alejo?
Aye.
Supervisor Phillips?
Aye.
Supervisor Lopez?
Aye.
Supervisor Adams? Aye. And Chair Supervisor Root Askew.
Aye. All right, the motion carries. We are Moving on to item number 3 on this agenda, which is to hold a public hearing to consider approving and adopting an assessment rate charges for 21-22 with a cost of living adjustment increase of 1.6% for flood zones 1, 1A, 8, 9, 12, and 17, and to adopt a COLA increase of 1.6 for flood zones 1, 1A, 8, 9, 12, and 17. Erica, we've got you back on the hot seat.
Yes, it's me again. Thank you, Supervisor Askew. You've already read today's action for me. So consider your board to hold a public hearing today and to approve and adopt fiscal year 2021-22 COLA increase of 1.6% for the zones mentioned by Supervisor Askew. And again, this item was also presented on April 26 and recommended approval by your board. And the financial impact for these flood zones will have an estimated total revenue increase of a little over $30,000 with the breakdown shown here on the table. And I'm gonna go through each zone in detail. And as stated before, with the 1.6% COLA increase, the revenues collected from these flood zones support vegetation management, rodent control, and general maintenance of these facilities. And this table shows the charges per land use factor in Zone 1 that generates estimated revenue about $291,000. And here shows the Zone 1 boundary map. It shows the Pajaro River area. And same as Zone 1, this table shows the charges per land use factor. Total estimated revenue generated from Zone 1A is about $199,000. And here's the map, shows you Zone 1A boundary extended from the end of Pajaro River. And Zone 8 is for Bryan Canyon in Soledad area. Charges per acre is shown here on the table for a total of 3,140 parcels. Total revenue generated from Zone 8 is about $75,000. And the Zone 8 boundary map here shows you on the screen. And Zone 9 is for reclamation ditch around Salinas to Castroville. Charges per acre is shown here on the table. Total revenue generated from Zone 9 is around $1.2 million. And here shows you the Zone 9 boundary map. It extends from Spence Road to Salinas and all the way to Castroville. And then Zone 12 is for San Lorenzo Creek in King City. Charges per acre is shown here on the table. Total revenue generated from Zone 12 is around $32,000. And Zone 12 boundary map here. Zone 17 is for Mocoho Slough in Moss Landing and Inland. Total revenue generated from Zone 17 is about $91,000. And here's the Zone 17 boundary map. And with that, with the last slide, it had concluded my presentation for the flood zones mentioned. Now I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, direction?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Phillips, a second from Adams. Is there any public comment on this item number 3, public hearing? Seeing no hands raised from the public, I'll bring it back to the board for a roll call vote.
Supervisor Alejo?
Aye.
Supervisor Phillips?
Aye.
Supervisor Lopez?
Aye.
Supervisor Adams? Aye. And Chair Supervisor Root Askew.
Aye. Right, our motion carries. Finally, we have item number 4 on our agenda for Water Resources Agency today. This is to approve and adopt the Monterey County Water Resources Agency fiscal year 2021-2022 requested budget. And once again, we have Erica Leal here to make a brief presentation.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Askew, and good morning, members of the board and members of the public. Erica Leal with the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. And today's action is to consider approving and adopting the Monterey County Water Resources Agency fiscal year 2021-22 requested budget. Like previously mentioned with the assessments, this requested budget item was also presented to the Monterey County Water Resources Agency Board of Directors on April 26, 2021, and they recommended the your board to approve this item. The financial impact shows here on the table for fiscal year 2021-22 with an estimated beginning fund balance of $16.5 million. The agency is estimating total expenditures of $38.4 million and total revenues of $32.3 million. We will be using $6 million from fund balance to bring the estimated ending fund balance to a little under $10.5 million at the end of June 2022. And Water Resources Agency is submitting a statutorily balanced budget for fiscal year 2021-22. And this budget included estimated $4.9 million in one-time cost. And for FY22, CalCap cost is around $824,000. And for fiscal year 2021-22, total expenditures estimated at $38.4 million. And that have been broken down in the categories shown here on the table. And here shows the pie chart for expenditures with the same category shown on the previous tables. And then total revenues for fiscal year 2021-22 estimated at $32.3 million, while utilizing $6 million from fund balance to make a statutorily balanced budget. And the same right here shows the pie chart of the revenues with the categories shown on the table. And this table reviews the estimated beginning fund balance, the total expenditures, total revenues, and estimated ending fund balance categorized by fund, as each fund has its own specific purpose to utilize the fund balance. And with the last slide, it had concluded my presentation for the agency's fiscal year 2021-22 requested budget. Now I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for all of the work that went into developing this budget request for this year. Do we have any public comment on the Water Resource Agency 21-22 requested budget? Seeing no hands raised, I'll bring it back to my colleagues. Is there any comments, question, or discussion about today's action? Supervisor Adams?
I do, excuse me, just have 2 questions that I wanted to ask. And one is there a timeline for the 218 vote that we've been talking about for the fixing everything up at the dams? Have we come to any kind of time frame on that specifically?
Good morning. Good morning, Supervisor Adams. This is Brent Buki, General Manager. So we have prepared a draft engineer's report for the Prop 218. It's a requirement in order to get to that next stage. We presented to our board of directors. They asked us to go back and address the concerns that were stated by our stakeholders. And so we are working on that, and I don't have a new timeline. It'll be based on when the board of directors accepts the engineer's report, and then we'll move that to the board of supervisors as well. So it's we're still working on it, and we're optimistic that that we'll get it done in the next several months. The challenge before was, in order to get it an assessment on the tax roll, it had to be completed already. So we've missed that opportunity to be on the tax roll. So we're looking at some other alternatives from like getting a loan from iBank or something, if we're able to move this project forward.
Okay, thank you for telling me that. That's good. And then just a, an observation actually is just looking at the fund balance going from 16 million to 10 million, and a little bit of concern over the continued sort of drawdown on this. And wanted to know, is there any way that we can build up the fund balance? Is there, I don't think that there could be a plan for that, but I do worry that, we're going to find ourselves getting pretty close to the bone in the next couple of years if we don't find a way to get out of this.
Yeah,
what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so Erica, if you can put that spreadsheet back up there. So the ones that are low are like CSIP. We took I think 1.5 million out of the fund balance for CSIP, and so we're under $100,000 in fund balance, and that is a critical project for the area in and around Castroville. And so that really jumps out at me. We've talked at budget committee before about the fund balance in the SRDF that can only be used for the SRDF. And so that's not a number that we could use elsewhere. When you see San Lorenzo Creek Fund 111, it's a concern. All these fund balances that are under $100,000 is a concern. So we don't have, we're applying for grants. There's a lot of infrastructure potential grants out there. We've been working hard to get on the list of those. And I talked to staff this morning. We're working with Cal OES and FEMA and others that have these pots of money, and we're trying to fit our projects into those funding sources.
Anything that we can do to help you, just let us know and we will.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Right, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to adopt the Water Resources Agency 21-22 requested budget.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Adams, a second from Alejo. Thank you. And could we get a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Alejo?
Aye.
Supervisor Phillips?
Aye.
Supervisor Lopez?
Aye.
Supervisor Adams?
Aye.
And Chair Supervisor Root Askew?
Aye. All right, so the motion carries. We will adjourn.
Thank you.
Okay, we will adjourn the Board of Supervisors of the Monterey County Water Resources Agency now. Circle back over to the Pajaro County Sanitation District that we had briefly recessed. Do we have guidance yet from budget staff about how we intend to fund the augmentation request for the Pajaro County Sanitation District?
Chair, this is Dwayne Woods with the County Administrative Office. I will share the latest worksheet here, and for the Pajaro Sanitation District, that was, let me find it myself. Okay, we currently have that out of contingencies. I'm going to share this worksheet this time, but we're looking for guidance from the board if they have another preferred source to fund that out of. So it's the Pajaro CSD here, 394 out of contingencies. However, the choices that the board would have, if it's a sewer project, we could, if it qualified for ARPA, we could utilize ARPA funds for it, or revenue backfill. I would suggest if it is a qualified sewer project under the ARPA category, we use just basic ARPA category under the infrastructure if it's maintenance work.
I think that would be my preference as well, but Supervisor Adams?
I agree. I think that we should take it from ARPA.
Dwayne and board members, I just wanted to clarify, based on my understanding from the staff, we should ask staff, but it doesn't seem that this is an infrastructure project. So I think we should clarify from the public works staff what this really covers.
I think some of it's from that lawsuit where we got hit with the big lawsuit when we had the spill there, and so I think that's the reason. I'm not sure ARPA will cover it.
Oh, too bad.
Is Sean Ellerby on the line?
Yes, I am.
Is this an infrastructure project or something
It
else?
is
Sean?
not. It is not. So
Okay.
it's general liability as well as just some maintenance costs. It would not
All right,
qualify
then.
for ARPA.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Choices would be
Supervisor
contingent.
Lopez? Sorry, go ahead. Supervisor, Dwayne Wood, so you're saying contingencies or cannabis would be our two options?
You could have cannabis contingencies or ARPA revenue backfill.
ARPA revenue backfill. Okay, Supervisor Lopez?
Yeah, two questions. One is on the Salinas Valley Promise. Could that not be ARPA based on economic development, workforce, and everything else we've talked about in the past, Dwayne?
Indeed, it could be. I think staff originally listed as cannabis growth because they used cannabis last time. But if the board so chose, we could put ARPA on that and work with the group to make sure it qualifies as long as it's in economic resiliency or training of workforce.
Yeah, I'd prefer ARPA. My recommendation would be ARPA, and if it fit, then go cannabis. But I'm just one, obviously. And the second question would be to Supervisor.
And sorry, Supervisor Lopez, we're still on the Pajaro County Sanitation District agenda.
Oh.
So if we could circle back to those other changes, but we need to make a decision about how to fund the Pajaro County Sanitation District. So did you have an opinion about whether it was contingency or cannabis?
No, I'm
or
good.
ARPA backfill, revenue backfill?
Madam Chair?
No, I'm good.
You're good with whatever?
Correct. Whatever
Okay.
staff recommends based on eligible pots of funding.
Okay, so Supervisor Adams?
Is this a one-time funding?
Is this a one-time funding request? Once we fund this once, we're covered? Sean?
For this
Ellerby?
for this fiscal year, it is one time. However, for as long as we own this district, we will probably continue to have increased general liability costs for a 7-year period.
But this isn't the kind of thing that once we put it in, it's like automatically it just gets renewed every year. This would have to come back every year for determination on where we would fund it?
Correct.
And it may not come back. I mean, if we were fortunate enough to sell it.
Correct.
Okay, then I think I would recommend it coming out of cannabis so that we can protect the contingency fund.
Okay, I've got a nod from Philip. I can support that. I think that's 3. Supervisor Lopez and Alejo, does that work for you?
I'm good with it.
Yep.
Okay, so then our action on Pajaro County Sanitation District, our consent calendar, would be, if I could get someone to help revise what action it is that we're taking on that. So we're moving.
It would be adopting the budget for the Pajaro Community Service District with direction to staff to fund the 394,791 out of cannabis growth.
Okay, do we have a motion to support the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Second?
Right, we have a motion from Phillips, a second from Adams. Could we take a roll call vote?
Director Alejo?
Oh, sorry, Alejo has his hand raised. So let me go to Supervisor Alejo first, and I think we may need to go out to public comment as well. So my apologies. Supervisor Alejo.
Okay, so, Madam Chair, we're only on the list and the funding revenues. There was one item that we did not get back to. It was requested by Donna Myers of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency regarding the deep aquifer study. And she had mentioned that this was something that she had asked one-time contribution of $250 from the county. And then she was also going to the Water Resource Agency, the city of Salinas, numerous other cities, and already received matching contributions proportional. But I know this
Sorry,
is something-
Supervisor Alejo, I'm sorry, we're on the Pajaro County Sanitation District agenda item. We have a motion and a second. Is this related to the Pajaro County Sanitation District?
I had seen that we were putting the chart back on the screen, so I'll defer until we get through this. Okay, I'm good on motion.
Okay, you're good on this motion. Okay, let me, and thank you for bearing with us. So any public comment on the Pajaro County Sanitation District staff recommendation to utilize contingency funds to fund the needs as listed in the consent calendar item?
Madam Chair, I believe you said contingency, and I believe we were saying that it would be the cannabis growth.
I'm sorry, you're right. It's cannabis growth, and I misread that. Thank you. So cannabis growth funds. Okay. I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second to use cannabis growth to fund this item. Could we get a roll call, please?
Director Alejo?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Lopez?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
And Director Chair Root Askew.
Aye. And thank you for the correction, Supervisor Adams, keeping us honest here. Okay, so moving this one back. Okay, now we are, we're adjourning the Pajaro County Sanitation District. I think the only meeting that we still have open is the Board of Supervisors. And we are now going to take a closer look at the list of contingency, cannabis, ARPA fund requests that have been made. Supervisor Alejo, you had mentioned an additional item that was not on the list. Do you want to speak to that again?
Right. It threw me off that we had the Excel spreadsheet already, and I wanted to make sure before we took a vote that we weren't voting on a finality on that. But now that we're back to the Board of Supervisors, yes, I was mentioning Donna Myers, Executive Director of the Salinas Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, had come to us and had spoken about the need for a deep aquifer study. And I know she had also met with Charles and our county council, and she had she's already done a lot of pre-planning and got commitments from other cities and the Water Resources Agency to pay for this one-time cost. It's a cost a study that will be done over 2 years, but that will updates will be given and the work product will be helpful in the process. But this is something that touches all our supervisorial districts. And I wanted to ask Les Gerard, our county council, to be able to just explain a little bit, because this was an important request, and it's something that otherwise will hold up work and CEQA analysis and permitting that needs to be done on this. This is a critical part of that, and I wanted to see if you could just elaborate on the need for the deep aquifer study.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors. The deep aquifer study will benefit the entire Salinas Valley groundwater basin, in my opinion. Each of your districts touches the 180-400 aquifer, and the deep aquifers are underneath the 180-400, and some believe they actually extend farther to the south, closer to the four-base subbasin, and even maybe close to the east side subbasin. So each of you, in my opinion, have an interest in the performance of the 180-400 and the deep. And as we know, with continued seawater intrusion, there is more of a demand to extend wells into the deep aquifer to provide fresh water for the economic basis of the farming community in Monterey County. So I think it's important for a lot of reasons to protect the economic base in the 180-400, but also to provide needed information that will help the CEQA analysis that will need to be done either for new wells individually or for an amendment to the county code and the well ordinance that needs to be amended in light of the County of Stanislaus case. So I think it provides an overall benefit to the county, not just to the people living in the 180-400. Thank you. Refresh my recollection, Charles. I think it was 250 for next year, or is it 200 for next year?
My recollection was 100 each year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, 100 each year for 2 years.
Right.
If we could verify that, I heard her say 250,000.
I'll
Because
text her right now, find out.
The water resource,
Well,
Brent might know too, because I think the Water Resource Agency was asked to contribute 250, and then they were going to proportional amounts to the different cities, City Salinas and down the Salinas Valley.
Yeah, and I think the other question is, if the board is inclined, is also funding source. And it's not clear whether this would be supportive, come under the ARPA water project, because it is certainly a precursor to the water projects that might happen. In addition, it might be as far as economic recovery, because there's no doubt that the water needs of the Salinas Valley and the 18400 that even go beyond the Salinas Valley are integral to our economic recovery of our agricultural industry.
I want to ask if Brent Bookie wants to add anything here, as they're a critical partner on this.
Good morning, Supervisor Alejo. So yes, the Water Resource Agency did commit to provide funding on this deep aquifer study. We are in the process of annexing some property into Zone 2C, or actually recovering the fee for the annexation. They're already in the zone, but there's an annexation fee that we've identified as a funding source to provide to the SVB GSA for this deep aquifer study.
Thank you for that. And yes,
Supervisor Alejo, are you asking that we add $250,000?
So it's $100,000 per year. It's for 2 years, so it's $200,000 total. $100,000 per year.
Okay, perfect.
I just confirmed, Supervisor. I just talked to Ms. Myers and confirmed that. Yes.
Oh, okay, good. That's much better than, I think you're more palpable than a larger sum.
He's always trying to pick our pocket, isn't he?
We played that off. He was going to ask for 500 and go down to 200, but it worked out.
I learned from Phyllis. We're always asking for North County, so I'm just learning.
So if the board is so inclined, I would suggest adding that to the County Administrative Officer's Office budget. Excuse me, with the funding source. I don't know if Dwayne agrees on the economic and or water projects under ARPA, and if not, we'd have to find a different funding source, which I would suggest would be cannabis or contingency.
If I may, Dwayne, I have read the guidelines for the ARPA, and I'm not sure that it's a comfortable stretch. What I would say is that we would initially put it under contingencies. And if we are further reading and do some due diligence on it, if it fits for ARPA, I would definitely go there first. But for purposes of budgeting right now, I would say be on the safe side.
So,
thanks. Perfect.
I'm a support on that if we're trying to count to 3.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, so can we just restate that and pull the sheet back up again with that added on?
Yeah, can you confirm the amount?
Can we confirm the amount?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's $100,000 this coming fiscal year, and then another $100,000 the following fiscal year.
Okay, for this budget period, though, it's $100,000.
Correct, 21-22 fiscal year.
Okay, so we're looking at $15 million, $15.7 million in expenditures above and beyond what the recommended budget that staff presented to us is. Having had a chance to look at the list, we still haven't given clarification about the project room key or the request for rental assistance to subsidize sorry, we do have that there. So the last thing that's pending that's not clear is the project room key. But I'm just going to ask my colleagues, are you all comfortable expending $15.7 million above what the recommended budget was And does that leave us with the resources that we need to negotiate with our employees this year? And if not, where are you comfortable making some trims to what's listed on this spreadsheet? Supervisor Lopez.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear from staff. I mean, I've heard opinions, but I haven't heard from staff where they intend to pull the money from and what that does to contingency. And you know, I'm just not hearing that for certain yet. And I think staff can't determine that on the fly. So I'm not prepared to sit here today and start working backwards based on that. I want to make sure staff has the time to go determine where these funds can and can't be pulled from, what's left over. The question on that I still had at the end was on the internet broadband programming. We had it listed here at 4 million, but has that been reduced to the annual ask, which was, I forget what the total number was. I think 1.25 maybe for the first year was the estimate. I see a full 4.2 there in year one from ARPA. And so that doesn't reflect a single year budget. And so again, I think some of that cleanup needs to be done before we start saying, is it done? Right? That's my opinion based on the spreadsheet that was emailed to me and that we're looking at now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I could, through the chair.
Yep, thank you.
We have listed all of the current funding sources that we have, and the board could give direction on each and every one, or could give general guidance on it. On the 4.2 million, we will confer with, since it's ARPA funding and it's clear that this is ARPA legitimate, before we actually budget the 4.2, we'll make sure that it is staged in a manner that we believe that its spend is going to be. So it could be, I mean, it's as simple as if it's 1,250,000, we can just change that right here. That's easy, but we're going to have to confer with the people who are going to implement it. But as far as where we're at right now, all of the ads equal, and I have a sum down here, to 15.744410 million. And here's the spread, how it looks. We're using, and this is additional beyond what is in the recommended budget, $8 million additional use of ARPA funds. And that is including the 4.2 broadband, which once you start down that road, you head down that road, whether we appropriate it or not. We have 4.7 million use of contingencies, and we have almost 7 million in contingencies. So you'll have a balance of 1.9 million left in your contingencies, 762,000 of use of cannabis growth, and all the details above us here. 1.2 million of revenue backfill use, and we have 3.4 available. That leaves 2.1, almost rounded to 2.2 available. We have 500,000 coming from Natividad and 736,000 coming from the road fund. So depending on the direction of the board, the only thing we really need is to understand if the board is going to stay with these increased augmentations. Are they going to change these? And is there specific direction about where the board would like to pull the funding, as these are the funding sources? Contingencies, ARPA, cannabis growth, and the ones that you could really change around would be the use of revenue backfill, contingencies, and cannabis growth.
All right, so Supervisor Lopez, so this is our budget hearing, and this is our chance to give this direction now to have these additions incorporated into the final budget with the revenue sourcing as listed on the spreadsheet. Supervisor Alejo.
Yeah, to Supervisor Lopez's point, I want to, since we have to get this right here. So I think on going back to the digital divide, if the Equal Access Monterey Bay project is over 3 years, then I think it's prudent at this time to give it that 1 year funding, and then we'll look, knowing that it's going to be a 3 year commitment, we'll deal with the second phase next year. But perhaps dropping that I think the total price was 3.5 million. And maybe we start with the 1.25. That way we could get our numbers more accurate as we make a decision here. So that would reduce it, I think, by 2.25 million.
Yeah, good.
That thing just quadrupled in price.
I know. I think those are the wrong numbers. No, it's actually different than that. It's because the overall project was 4.2, but then you have so we're dropping, instead of 3.5 million, we're doing 1.25 million for the equal access Monterey Bay. But then there was projects 1, 3, 4, and 5, and those
Right.
other 4 projects total up to 300 plus 35 plus 150 plus 200, which is 685,000.
No, so I think the total there should be about 1.9. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Yep.
1.9 with ARPA. All right, Supervisor Alejo, anywhere else that you see that we could trim out of this, or are you comfortable with this large total expenditure?
You know, we go to those remaining questions, right? The 250 of rental assistance. It's at 250. If I know, it's still a question, but maybe if we at least put 150, that might drop it 150 to have some funding up until those funding get exhausted, and that would drop that 100,000. But then the question is on the project room key, we keep not answering that question for Lori. It was a $2 million ask, and she said 6 months would be $1 million. I know it's a large number at this point in time, but I think we need just clarity. Is that going to be funded or not among at least 3 supervisors? Otherwise, at some point, we're going to have to decide. We're almost at the end of June, whether we're going to, what are we going to do with these 30 or so residents that have been utilizing these services in hotel rooms, and where are we going to place them? I hate to say we're not going to fund them.
Big concern that I share with you on that. I would like to see some funding there for that.
Right. And that's why at some point Lori's going to come back to us and say, where do I put them if they're no longer going to continue this program, as we're not over this pandemic yet?
Yep. Supervisor Alejo, would you be open to reducing the amount that we have allocated for the funeral assistance program?
That was my idea.
Okay, Phillips is going to jump in. I'll let you lead
No, go ahead.
So that maybe we're splitting rental assistance at 150 and bringing the funeral assistance program down by 150 to.
I think we haven't. I think we could budget for that at this time, Madam Chair. If the program runs out, if we get enough people utilizing it, and if Lori could come back to us and say we have more people needing more help, I think we're able to do that. So that would at least give us 350 to start with. I'm comfortable with that at this point in time.
Okay.
So that would offset it.
Offset. So it would be a reduction to the funeral assistance by 150.
And so it would be 350 plus the 150 for the rental assistance.
Yeah. Giving rental assistance 150. Some of the other areas that I'm looking at, I am uncomfortable with the total amount that we're putting forward in addition to what the budget recommendation was. I'm concerned that we're spending down our contingencies as much as we are, and I am concerned that we won't be able to meet the compensation needs of our employees moving forward. We're getting ready to do a bunch of class and comp studies. We're in negotiations with all of our units. And so some of the other areas that I'm looking at potentially would be, I wonder if, given that the majority felt that necessary to restore 5 funded positions to the Sheriff's Office, if the Sheriff's Office would be able to absorb the management analyst, the digital forensic position, and or the endemia or an engine within their budget. So those would be questions I would ask those who supported those requests in the first place, if there's any room to.
I would have said there's 7 positions, so if we could, like as we pointed out, no other department has had that kind of significant increase, and here we are giving 7 new positions, and perhaps if the sheriff prefers having the 5 patrols, then at least for this year, bypassing on the two other positions that was requested as a means to have some savings here, that would be just to the other departments.
But we would need a third voice to join us on that, Supervisor Alejo.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm to go back now and start popping these, I don't feel comfortable with it. So this is what we came up with, and I'm not looking at it now. I'm not inclined to start chipping away and pulling one particular agency that some of us just don't like, and I'm going to take that one on compared to the other one. So I agree with Chris. This is what we got. When they bring it back and we see all the fine-tuning of it and where it's coming from, and especially when we're talking about pulling out some of the big figures, spreading them out over 2 or 3 years, I think we're all right. But I'm not prepared to start chipping away at these.
But that's the process, though. We said we got the wish list, and that at the end of the process, we're going to fine tune it to see how we're going to afford to pay for it all. I mean, that's we're following the process, Supervisor Phillips.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Supervisor Adams, do you have anywhere that you think that we could cut back, or are you comfortable with the total?
It's just a
dollar
couple of
figure?
questions, and I want to add money to it, quite frankly.
Okay.
But because I've been assured that Park It is in here, but I'm not seeing it anyplace, and I want to know that it is.
This is a question. Dwayne or Ezekiel, did you hear? Yep. I don't have Park It on my notes.
So Park It would be part of the economic recovery dollars that would go through of the $2 million that is set aside for economic recovery earlier. It would go through that committee, and then that committee would then authorize for that program to be one of the programs that's funded, unless the board feels the need to specifically pull $25,000 from additional beyond the 2 million. But what I remember hearing was it's just part of the 2 million.
Thank you. So with that in mind, should we take a look at, if we're going to be just tricky about this, taking the wine corridor signage and put that over there as well, which would give us another 150 in this side of the house?
I mean, I think that so maybe this is a way that, so within the 2 million that's set aside for ARPA economic recovery, that wine corridor signage is coming from that portion, as is the business council request.
Pardon me. Our understanding of the discussion is a majority of the board, upon discussion, pulled the wine corridor and business council as a special allocation above and beyond the money that's already in there, and that's why you see it on this list here, wine corridor. It could be from the 2 million, or it could be additional 150 and 100,000 from ARPA funds. But that's how that's how we understood the board.
Yeah, I think my intention was definitely that it would be from my support is contingent on it coming from that 200, the 2 million for economic recovery, but allowing it to be approved now so that they could move forward. But that I defer to, if there were 3 votes, to have that be above and beyond. Can we get clarity on that? Was the 150 for wine corridor signage and the 100 for business council, was that above and beyond the 2 million that's been set aside for economic recovery through ARPA funds, or was that to come from that allocation?
I thought it was coming from that.
To come from.
I did as well.
Okay, there's 3 of us at the dais here saying that our understanding was that that was to come from the 2 million ARPA economic recovery.
Okay. So Madam Chair, can I clarify that 275,000 then? So it's 100, 150 plus the 25 for Park It. So 275 would be reduced, would be encumbered in the number that is given of the total 2 million to the Economic Development Committee in their process. Is that correct?
Say those numbers again, please.
So it's 100 for, it was 100 for MCBC, 150 for signage, and I believe the number was 25,000 for Park It. So that's 275,000.
And was there 3 support for Park It within that 200? Yep. Was that 2 million?
Right. So that's the question: is are we encumbering those 275 out of the 2 million? And I would support that.
Yes.
Okay, then there are 3 for that. So there's 3 to have Park It, wine corridor, and MCBC encumbered from the 2 million economic development, economic recovery
And then I have another suggestion as well. I'm wondering.
Hold on, let me just make sure. Dwayne and Ezekiel, are we clear on that direction now?
We're clear. What we will do though is, because there was only 1.8 in that category, I'll be adding a delta amount here to bring that to a rounded full $2 million of ARPA.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Supervisor Adams had a couple more items.
Thank you. I was just wondering if perhaps we spoke to Jason Cameron, if he may be able to trim the remodel and the move of the Veterans Building, or moving to your building, I should say. I think it's at 724 now. I'm looking for it in here.
Yes, 724.
724. He may find a way. I don't want to do this without his approval or his guidance, but there may be a way to cut it down to 600. That sort of thing.
Madam Chair,
100 here and 100 there, and pretty soon we're talking real money.
Supervisor Alejo?
I just wanted to speak against that. It was like, I think 70,000 out of that budget was for ongoing security. It was an ongoing cost. So it's a little bit over 600,000. I mean, they got their estimates of the work that needs to be done to remodel that office. It's not like he could just reduce it. And like I said, our veteran leaders came to us asking for this support. They rarely ask for anything, and when they do, it's something very reasonable and small. We're throwing a lot of other numbers elsewhere. So to try to take this away from veterans in our county, I think it's not fair to put Jason in a position and put him on the spot, asking him to reduce something that he knows, if you want to remodel that office and address its current needs and remove the dilapidated building that was mentioned behind it, this is the cost. And I hope my colleagues would stand firm on supporting our veterans.
Yeah, I would just say that the building, Jason really took one for the team and putting that all onto Military and Veterans Affairs. The abandoned building behind the portables really is not a veterans issue. It's a county responsibility to remove that blight, and the interior of the building that they're proposing to move into would require significant work for anybody in the county, or if we were to rent it for anybody to be able to utilize it, it's going to require some significant investment. So, kudos to veterans for taking on the hit and the responsibility for getting that done. But, I would, of course, ask that they are prudent in their utilization of the funds allocated, but I don't know that there's a lot of flexibility within what was presented. So, Supervisor Phillips?
The only one I think is the health headquarters water intrusion repair, and I don't know how urgent that is, whether they could make sure that the leakage is stopped, but maybe put that off a year. I don't know that. I don't remember that coming through our capital improvement committee, but that's the only place I see here where we could maybe, if we got close to $2 million into next year's budget, or part into this year's budget and the rest in the next year's budget.
Madam Chair, I wasn't finished.
Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Adams. So we'll circle back to the question about the water intrusion at the health headquarters. Supervisor Adams had a couple more items on her list. My apologies.
Thank you. I did want to examine each of the positions that we have listed in here and see if these were all at 100% time, and if we could determine when we would actually have these positions filled. Perhaps we would be able to make some of these, we know they're not going to get filled until, say, September or even until January. We could reduce that significantly. I think we need to take a look at each one of those positions to do that. And then this is a request to Dwayne and Ezekiel, going back to my comment of wanting to stick to the practice that we had of only using cannabis growth or any cannabis funding as one-time funds. If there would be any possibility that we could have the Salinas soccer complex come out of the cannabis account, and then have the new county communications director and the half-time public guardian deputy come out of the contingency fund.
I could support both of those changes.
Thank you.
I think you mentioned that before. Do we have a third agreement to support? And I'm not sure at this point, Supervisor Alejo and Lopez, if you're able to put your cameras on so that we could just see some thumbs up to know when we're good or when we need to back up or slow down, that might also be helpful as we move forward. Okay, Mary, I'm not hearing anyone support us.
Perhaps when John Phillips comes
change?
back,
Okay.
we can try that again.
Yep, okay, what else have you got?
That was it, but I do want to get the cost on the, looking at filling those positions later than beginning July 1. I think that'll make a nice little chunk as well.
Okay, so possibly that would be taking all of the positions and making some assumptions about when they'd be filled and moving the dollar amount to be less than a full 12 months. Supervisor Alejo.
I wanted to go back to what Supervisor Phillips suggested on the roof repair. The Health Department requested 3 major projects, 2 being HVACs, and then the roof. Perhaps we do the HVACs this year, and then we look at the roof repair next year. I think that's a reasonable approach. Getting 2 out of 3, unless we expect some major storms to come by the this coming year. I think there's a way to deal with the issues as has been, but then next year be able to look at that project and prioritize it for next year. And the numbers were actually arranged between 1.2 to 1.8, I believe, but I'm in agreement that might be something that could hold off a year. I know the HVAC systems are different, but I wanted to mention that. And the second point I wanted to remind us, like it keeps being mentioned as if the cannabis is only for one-time events. It's not. I mean, we're funding positions, ongoing positions for the cannabis staff and other county positions. So that's a misnomer. It's not accurate. We're funding ongoing positions through cannabis each year now, and we've done it for several years already. So, but I do agree that perhaps we could use some of the cannabis growth for this coming year for some of these funds to reduce the pressures on the contingency for the coming year.
So would you be comfortable, Supervisor Alejo, if you could scroll, I've got it in front of me, using cannabis growth to fund the Salinas Soccer Complex requests?
Yes, I'd be fine with that.
You'd be fine with that. Okay, so there's 3 for that then. Okay, and I see Elsa Jimenez. Sorry, did you have anything else, Supervisor Alejo?
No, but Miss Jimenez probably want to weigh in on about her roof.
yeah, she's got her hand raised. Okay, I wanted to make sure we wrapped up before I moved on. Okay, Director Jimenez.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. It's actually not the roof at 1270. So the last 2 winters, one whole side of our building is experiencing a water intrusion issue. To date, we've spent about $140,000 just with basic drying cleanup. It really puts about half of our staff, because it's impacting both the first and the second floor in terms of having to relocate them for several weeks, if not months, until we can dry up the issue. And there is a study underway right now, and I would really recommend that this project be prioritized so that we don't continue to prevent us to be able to serve the public and continue to spend funds on cleanup of that area. And also too, I'm concerned about potential mold growth and potentially more expensive tenant improvement projects to address this issue.
Right. So, Ms. Jimenez, could you explain what the water intrusion is from the soil on the bottom, or?
No. So it comes in through one whole side of our building, the building that faces Natividad campus. That whole area, there is water coming in through the side of the building.
Okay. But usually there's a cause for it, right? Either they didn't put in the proper what do you call it? The gutters is because
it's literally coming in through the side of the building. It could be through the windows. There's a study being done right now to help determine the cause of the water intrusion, and more importantly, being able to identify what the extent of the repairs. It could be that we have to completely redo the whole side of the building, hence why the $1.8 million high level.
Got it. Okay, that I think it's helpful for understand the severity of the problem. Thanks.
Well, there is a process where you go and there is a stuff that they make that you just nail it right on and spray it right on that is done all the time, and it's not 1.8, but I kind of know that.
We're gonna hire contractor Phillips to come in and fix up the health department. So I feel like we need to prioritize keeping that building secure. But
I feel the same
Supervisor
way.
Adams.
Thank you. This was the top priority for the capital improvement program, the committee.
Oh,
So
it was. Okay,
yes,
so it was something that the capital improvement committee discussed. Got it.
And then secondly, just going back to the cannabis growth account, I just want to make sure that I was very clear, as I had said before, that it was quite certain that all of the funds that were needed to run the cannabis program, all of the employees, et cetera, did come out of the cannabis growth account. So I was fully aware of that. I'm sorry that my colleague didn't quite get that. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to throw a couple things out that I would propose to reduce. I don't think I'll have support, but just for the sake of being really clear that I do have concerns about spending down all of our contingency and not having funds available for staffing needs in the coming year. I think I would come down and look at the Laguna Seca water and sewer project and maybe consider that in terms of the larger Laguna Seca set of needs. I would look at the if we could reduce the soccer complex to $200,000. I would look at the same with the Aromas Park. I would look at the Endemia and NGen projects and ask that the sheriff office account for those within their existing budget. I would take the 5 funded sheriff office positions and although the funding is there, until those are actually fully funded, fully filled, hold that funding back for the general fund dollars. I would look at the, let's see here. I would look at the CSA and CSD projects that we've prioritized and see if there's any way that some of those funds that we limit our funding of those to the urgent needs that are being presented. And those would be the places where I would start looking to make some changes. So, but I don't get the sense that I have support from anyone on any of those items, but just needed to go on record stating that I do believe that we need to be more prudent in our expenditures today.
Madam Chair, I'm on the Endemia and NGen. I'm in agreement with you. I mean, if we're giving the staffing, that's a fair request to make, that we reduce one of the other requests from the Sheriff's Department, and so I'm with you on that one. That would reduce this by $500,000, over half.
Yeah. All right. I'm not hearing any other. Adams?
I would also be supportive of your suggestion regarding the soccer complex and the park, to take 50 out of each of those, if not 100 out of each of them. And then also just wanted to make the comment to Dwayne and Wayne, or Dwayne and Ezekiel, that I only got halfway in my swap. So yes, the Salinas soccer complex would come out of cannabis, but that was to trade off having the county communications director and the half-time public guardian coming out of contingency.
And I can support that as well. That I think that was part of the trade that we had talked about.
Right.
Okay, if there's any further, I think we've hashed this out about as much as we're going to hash this out. We do need to just get clarification for Lori Medina on the, if we could scroll down.
Could I get clarity on the swapping out of the communication director? I'm not sure I've heard 3.
Oh, communications director. Do we have a third that would be willing to support using a contingency for the communications director position instead of cannabis growth funds?
I'm a no.
So that, as I said, that was a swap that I was making so that we wouldn't have ongoing staff that were not cannabis related coming out of the cannabis account.
So this would be coming out of contingency. So I put the cannabis money into the soccer complex in exchange for having regular staff coming out of the contingency.
I don't care.
That sounds pretty much like yes to me.
Yeah,
So
I
if
don't
you're
care.
willing to support Mary's
That's not
request,
somewhere
that's a
I don't-
third. Okay, Supervisor Lopez?
I just, I want to be really clear because the board made this decision a couple years ago that, those that request about one-time funding, not just the cannabis dependent or department positions get funded out of it. The board chose to fund several positions, ongoing funding for several departments based on need years ago. And so this one-time swap is just going to bring it back up next year on contingencies and make us question whether or not we're going to have this position again, because it's going to be need to move out of contingency back into cannabis next year. If not, we're going to always fund it out of contingency. But to be clear, there are several positions, and Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong, that we are funding out of cannabis that are not cannabis related.
You're correct, Supervisor. Throughout the last few years, we have, or the board has used cannabis as an ongoing basis for positions.
Stand correct.
So I'm comfortable making this change to today without making taking a position on maybe we need to come back and have a conversation about how cannabis is being used and take a big picture look at that. But for the sake of getting through this budget discussion today, I think we have 3 to support having that communications director position be listed as contingency, not cannabis. Did I hear that? Okay, so. And then the last thing that's listed here is for
Phillips is third, correct?
Yes.
But
yes,
it doesn't change the issue that we completed our contingencies here. So
Right.
where we do have funding for paying some of these costs and actually having a contingency budget for this coming fiscal year is by using cannabis growth. We've so far out of cannabis growth, we have proposed using, what is that, Mr. Woods? And thank you for clarifying that we have paid staff positions, as I stated earlier, on out of cannabis. I mean, that's just, being in the budget committee, we see all the positions that we've funded through cannabis. But what is the total we've used from cannabis growth so far?
766,000.
And how much are we projected to have in the cannabis budget cannabis growth budget for this coming fiscal year?
If I could qualify a few things here. In the base last year, we built in 15.4 million of cannabis ongoing growth revenue. And in the current budget, because of actions taken by the board, there was roughly about 2.6 million. So we have about 1.4 million of cannabis growth revenue that hasn't been used. And of that 1.4, the actions during these budget hearings is using 766.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne, and if you want to enter the correct amount or the exact amount, and there is 1,434,508. 508.
Thank you, Ezekiel. So $668,000 annually remains on the ongoing revenue that is not currently allocated.
All right, so thank you for clarifying that. So the last 2 things that we need clarification on would be the rental assistance or the project room key. And there was some discussion about taking $150,000 from the funeral assistance program, making it available for rental assistance as needed. Did I get that correct, Supervisor Alejo?
Yeah, that's what I agreed to, so that we could fund it. I'm
Okay.
trying to find answers here to find reasonable compromises here. So it was done with that intent, a swap.
But we still don't. So there's just 2 voices for that. So we would need a third voice to agree to that.
I'm good with that. I thought you already had 3 though.
Yeah,
Phillips.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so we're good with that. So we have 3 there. So for those, and that would be under rental assistance, it would be of the 500,000 for funeral assistance would be either or. And then for project room key, the request was for $2 million from Lori Medina. 350 is listed here, and I'm not sure, I don't have notes about who's said what on that. So if someone could make a suggestion, and we could then.
Yeah, it's kind of a counter to what we're trying to accomplish here, but Lori Medina said it would, because of the complexity of the program, that providers wanted at least a 6-month commitment to be able to continue the program, and that would be a $1 million commitment.
Okay, so do we want to make a $1 million commitment for Project Roomkey today, or do we want to tell the individuals who are currently receiving housing from the county that we're ending the program as of?
Well, you know, we knew the program was going to end, and it was supposed to dovetail into Project Homekey, and that was, and everybody knew that. I would think we put $250,000 into it to help facilitate
transition,
moving those people out and into the next program. But I can't see that we can do any more than that, especially when it wasn't designed to carry on, and we do have the new share center up and going, and
Laura Medina, are you on the line? Would you be able to work with? I think I heard you say, it says 350 here. I heard you say 250. What would that allow you to do, Lori?
Thank you. Well, it will allow me to ramp it down in 60 days. And then what we would have to do, I think that Project Homekey already has all of the slots committed, and there would be an additional 17 individuals who do not currently have any alternative to go. And we have a waiting list that we wouldn't be able to accommodate of about 30. And so we would be working with other providers to see if we could find alternative places, or we just don't have capacity.
And Lori, would the Shares Center be an option for keeping some of those folks in a safe, legal place to sleep at night?
It could. It could.
It could. Okay, Supervisor Alejo?
Yeah, because same like with the Good Night Inn, that's a 50% capacity. So is the Share Center at this point in time. So I know some of those slots, hopefully if the changes happen later this month, that we could utilize more of those beds at the Share Center for overnight stay. I know Project Roomkey was more comprehensive because they got the wraparound services from food to other social services. So it's not the same, but hopefully we could prioritize working with the Bay Area Community Services to give priority for beds at once slots open up. But Lori, any word though from the state whether more money? I mean, this was started by
excellent point.
Newsom. Do we know if more money's going to come in? So if we do get like a 60-day stretch, we could hopefully house them until we could might be able to get some more money if more is coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. In the governor's May revise, there was more money allocated for Project Roomkey. In terms of how that will shake out statewide, that's unclear yet. And of course, the state budget isn't set to actually be finalized until June 15th. Hopefully, there'll be good news there. Otherwise, we'll just be planning for ramp down.
Right. So I would, at least that would give us at least a little stretch more, and hopefully, because the state always takes time to get more money out to folks and for us to receive it, that would give us a little safety window until we could, hopefully, if we get the funding, then we could keep it going utilizing those state funds. Otherwise, Lori, if we could work to try to ask, and working with Salinas, maybe we could work to prioritize them for Share Center beds that may open up later this month.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. CAO McKee, do you want to make any wrap-up comments? And then we'll just give everyone a chance to make some final round of comments, and we can close out this budget hearing.
Yeah, I think on Supervisor Leo's point, that last point, a couple things. One, first, it's unclear to me, and Lori, maybe you can clarify, the monies that you're seeking right now on Project Room Key, that how long is that supposed to last, those dollars right there? And then I think the other thing that the board should be keeping in mind, as Supervisor Alejo was saying, is if you listen to Governor Newsom and what he's been putting forward as far as different proposals for monies, there's a lot of talk about a significant amount of money to help fund different homeless programs and services and housing. And I know that, obviously, we don't know until it comes. There are other, there's infrastructure money that the state and federal government is talking about trying to fund. There's early childhood education, other school programs that the state is talking about funding. So I think the board should recognize that allocating money at this time, fully funding some things may need to be revisited as we move forward and say, okay, we're getting monies from the state or federal government coming in for some of these assets later on, and recognize that it's best to leverage those sources rather than spending contingencies and things that we might be able to use on other worthy projects that we have. We have a lot of worthy projects throughout the county.
And if I may, in answer to Charles's first question about how long does the current funding we have, how long will that take us through? And that's approximately until about the end of August.
Yeah, no, I was also not just the current funding, but also the funding that you're seeking right here.
Yeah, well, this would allow us to, the only thing right now for that amount of money, our only choice would be to ramp down the program and find ways to transition current guests out of the current room key program into alternative sources. This would allow us to shut down the program. So that would take about another 60 days. So we're really looking like September-ish, the program would end.
But Lori, on June 15th, the state will vote on the budget, and then we will know, there's formulas that will let Monterey County know, or the continuum of care know, this is how much the continuum of care is going to get, this is how much social services Monterey County is going to get. And then by the time we finalize this budget at the end of the month, we might have a more accurate picture about how this may work. So at least for the time being, yes, you're planning.
It's just hard to know right now.
Right, it's hard to know right now. And you're giving us what you could do with this if no other fund from the state comes. But by the end of the month, when we finalize this, we may have a more clearer picture that might give us more hope for our clients.
Okay, with that, I'm going to, I think, pass the microphone around for any final closing comments from each supervisor, and then we will vote to confirm the direction as stated on the spreadsheet posted, and then we will adjourn our meeting. Supervisor Phillips, would you like to get us started?
I don't appreciate everybody working together and getting this done, and I got about a half hour before I have to be home, so I'll be brief.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Adams.
I thank you as well for running us pretty well, Supervisor Askew, in the midst of all the pain that you're enduring with your broken arm. But I am just hoping that we didn't make any bad decisions in our budget. As I said at the very beginning, a budget is a reflection of the tone and the intent of a community and how we treat our people. So I'm very pleased with many of the things that we would have put in, and look forward to seeing what the end numbers look like.
Supervisor Alejo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all my colleagues and all the department staff. And when I approach our budget, we always talk about trying to be fair for all the departments. And sometimes it works out, sometimes not so much in certain areas. But I did want to acknowledge that this budget is very different from our previous ones, only because we're trying to do a budget utilizing these federal funds that will help us as a county and our local communities and our businesses to be able to recover from this unprecedented pandemic. I think we achieved a lot of good things in our budget. I hope that when the state approves the budget on June 15th, that we might hopefully relook at our budget maybe in August or September. Perhaps there might be some additional resources that could alleviate some of the cost pressures on our contingencies and other areas of the budget, because I think it is a stressed budget. We don't have too much flexibility. If emergencies come up, we will have to resort to strategic reserves. But we hope that if more funding comes for infrastructure or for homelessness services, that might help us reduce those the stresses in this year's proposed budget. I recognize that, as I stated before, and as you have, Madam Chair, that we are in negotiations and we try to be fair and bargain in good faith to make sure that we result in just pay raises each cycle of bargaining. And so that cost is not going to go away. That's probably going to be an over a $15 million plus cost over the next 3 years that will be added on to this budget. So with that, I think we did the best we could. I think it's overall a good budget, and hopefully that some of those pots of funding, we will designate those two programs that will really help, that we could put more thought into, but also design them in a way that has the maximum benefit for the people of Monterey County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Alejo. Supervisor Lopez.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to thank everybody. This budget processes are never easy. I think that's why right after the budget gets approved at the end of this month, we get a summer break. I think it's to recover from the budget process. But I know that the people who deal with that most are Ezekiel, Dwayne, and their team. And so I want to thank them and all the budget leads at the different departments for doing such a great job of this year of really keeping up with the changes that were coming down quickly from the state and federal level, all these shifting pots of funding, where it is and isn't going. You guys made this process as painless as possible given such a weird financial year. And so I really want to show some appreciation to each one of you and to our community advocates who've been vocal over the last year going through this pandemic about the needs, making sure that we were clearly focused as a board on making sure that the impact to our communities was lessened, whether that was an economic focus, a family focus, a childhood impact focus. We've heard it all, and it's because of you champions in the community. So as we wrap this year, even though this was a difficult process, I think I just want to thank everybody for sticking with us, for advocating, and for making sure we were aware of the issues that we can see. Obviously, there's issues we can't see, and continuing changes coming down the pike has been expressed by many of my colleagues. And so we'll continue to shift and bend and do what we need to do to make sure that Monterey County is successful in rising out of this pandemic. And lastly, I just want to say, overall, it was a fun process, and maybe we should do it again next year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I don't know about your idea of fun, Chris, but thank you. I want to start by thanking my colleagues. I know we've been maybe more iterative than in past budgets, but I do believe that the level of involvement and communication and sort of round discussion has led us to better policy outcomes today and hopefully for the coming year. So thank you for engaging and remaining engaged as we go through the process. I want to thank all of the members of the public who have been so clear and vocal in communicating their priorities and their values and their needs to us, and to all of our county staff who really have worked so hard. Our $1.6 billion budget is really thanks to the work that you do day in and day out. And so hopefully the decisions that we made here can both support the capacity that our staff needs to be able to continue serving our community. And I think those are about all I've got to say for today. I look forward to going home and taking some pain medication. So sorry, Mr. Vega's hand is up. Yes, Mr. Vega, thank you. And thank you to our budget staff. Again, I think our county is in as strong a position as we are because of our budget team that keeps us honest and keeps us balanced. So, Mr. Vega.
Thank you for those kind comments. And I just wanted to just make a final comment on Arpa allocation funding. As because of all the allocations that happened today and the direction that we received from the board, the investments in the infrastructure category actually received more funding than initially allocated. So I just wanted to point out that we're going to be taking that difference of approximately $5.6 million in additional infrastructure items from the revenue loss category. So I just wanted to make sure the board is aware of that. since some of the shifting of funding occur, the area where we could take that increase in cost is going to be coming from the prevented loss category from future years.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vega. With that, I think we are ready to adjourn. We will be adjourning our meeting today in memory of the VTA victims. I would like to invite Supervisor Lopez to make our adjournment comments today. Thank you, Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief, but you know, the community just north of us in San Jose was really rocked by the shooting that took place at the VTA facility just a little over a week ago. And as we close this meeting, we wanted to take time to really send our condolences and our heartfelt prayers to the families who are suffering. There was a strong local connection to the former mayor of Greenfield, and his son, Timothy Romo, was one of those tragically taken from us by the violence that was experienced in San Jose. And so as we all reflect on the important work we do for our community, we know that VTA is a big part of the transportation community in San Jose. They're public servants whose lives were cut short by this tragic violence. And so we want to make sure that they know that this board sends their prayers, their thoughts, and that we stand firm with them as our community in South County continues to reel from the loss. I've seen so many messages of folks seeking support and seeking outreach from one another as we continue to reel from these losses. I want to thank the entire board for sharing these moments today to adjourn this important session in memory of those taken in that senseless act of violence in San Jose last week. Thank you, Madam Chair.
With that, we stand adjourned.